other not too bad. You could
hello everyone. Can I just double check everyone can hear me? It's okay, yeah? Okay. الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونستهديه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. We begin by praising Allah and sending blessings upon His final Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to any non-Muslims that are in the crowd. Welcome to the second lecture in our annual Islamic Awareness Week. This one is titled, Is the Sharia the Solution to the World's Problems? And I'm sure everybody's seen or heard about the Sharia, if you're Muslim or non-Muslim. Inshallah you have, and you will see some of the, debates, discussions that we will open today. The speaker is Hamza Tzortzis from IARA. So inshallah what we'll do is, because we're running a bit late, we'll proceed straight away. What we'll do first is have a recitation from the Quran. So if you'd like to just listen attentively, you can see some of the verses that talk about Islamic Sharia.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. إنا أنزلنا التوراة فيها هدى ونور يحكم بها النبيون الذين أسلموا للذين هادوا والربانيون والأحبار بما استحفظوا من كتاب الله وكانوا عليه شهداء فلا تخشوا الناس واخشوني ولا تشتروا بآياتي ثمنا قليلا ومن لم يحكم بما أنزل الله فأولئك هم الكافرون. وكتبنا عليهم فيها أن النفس بالنفس والعين بالعين والأنف بالأنف والأذن بالأذن والسن بالسن والجروح قصاص فمن تصدق به فهو كفارة له ومن لم يحكم بما أنزل الله فأولئك هم الظالمون. وقفينا على آثارهم بعيسى ابن مريم مصدقا لما بين يديه من التوراة وآتيناه الإنجيل فيه هدى ونور ومصدقا لما بين يديه من التوراة وهدى وموعظة للمتقين. وليحكم أهل الإنجيل بما أنزل ومن لم يحكم بما أنزل الله فأولئك هم الفاسقون وأنزلنا إليك الكتاب بالحق مصدقا لما بين يديه من الكتاب ومهيمنا عليه فاحكم بينهم بما أنزل الله ولا تتبع أهواءهم عما جاءك من الحق لكل جعلنا منكم شرعة ومنهاجا ولو شاء الله لجعلكم أمة واحدة ولكن ليبلوكم فيما آتاكم فاستبقوا الخيرات إلى الله مرجعكم جميعا فينبئكم بما كنتم فيه تختلفون وأن احكم بينهم بما أنزل الله ولا تتبع أهواءهم واحذرهم أن يفتنوك عن بعض ما أنزل الله إليك فإن تولوا فاعلم أنما يريد الله أن يصيبهم ببعض ذنوبهم وإن كثيرا من الناس لفاسقون.
Thank you to the brother for the beautiful recitation. And I hope that displays some of the issues and the debates we're going to talk about in this lecture today. So what I'll do now is pass it straight over onto the speaker for today. And if Hamza can come up and give the speech, inshallah.
I'm going to start as Muslims do in the name of God, in the name of Allah. And alhamdulillah, wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah, amma ba'd. Brothers and sisters and friends, I greet you with the warmest greetings of peace. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. For those who don't know, that basically means may the peace and blessings of God be upon you all. I'd like to thank the University of Leicester Islamic Society for arranging such a interesting and important topic, because I think as Muslims, non-Muslims, human beings in general, we have a lot of misconceptions about Shariah, about Islamic law, about the teachings of Islam in general. And I think the reason for that is because we live in a post-9/11 reality, and that post-9/11 reality is somewhat of a dangerous reality, because what we do is that we take baggage, we take emotional, intellectual, social, individual baggage, and we superimpose it on the other. And it is very dangerous. And I think because we all have egos and human beings have this spiritual internal disaster called the ego, and post-9/11 type of environments feed that ego, and we really want to say it's us against them. As you heard the oft-repeating statement, you're either with us or you're with the terrorists. That kind of forced dichotomy. I don't know if you've watched Star Wars, but do you remember Obi-Wan Kenobi? When he talks to Darth Vader, he's just about to become the Darth Vader, and he said, only a Sith Lord deals in absolutes. Yeah? And I think there's a good point here. The point is, it's not that kind of black and white reality. Now the reason I mentioned this in the beginning is because we superimpose this baggage, and because human beings do that anyway. We have an amazing ability to take what we think is right, to take all these kind of pseudo patterns we believe to be true in our past, and we superimpose them on others. And I think this is a shame. And it's happened not only within the Muslim community, but outside of the Muslim community too. And it's not the non-Muslims looking at the Muslims, but it's also the Muslims looking at the non-Muslims too. We all suffer from a pugnacious attitude. And I think we must stop this. And it's very important for us to highlight this. Now, let me give you an example. In normal kind of sociology or psychology, we know there are two different things. Those things are your drama and your reality. And your drama is the interpretation of reality. These are two different things, but sometimes we think they're the same thing. That your drama is the same as reality. Let me give you an example. Imagine I'm at work and I'm in the office, and I always walk towards the kitchen to make a cup of coffee. I do this many times a day. And every time I do it, two of my best friends are whispering. You're like, okay, I don't have a self-esteem issue. I'm alright. You make your coffee, you go back. Again, you go to make your coffee or tea, and you see your two best friends again, whispering. And you're like, hold on a minute. Something's going on here. Because they stop every time I get there. Next day, go get my tea, my coffee. Two of my best friends. Continuing for a whole damn week. So what happens to me? They're conspiring against me. They're going to stab me in the back. There was redundancies a few months ago. They want me out. I knew that day John in the pub, the way he looked at me. I knew it. And this has been going on all my life. When I was 7, my mum said exactly the same thing. And then you build this kind of drama. And you have a meeting with your line manager. After a few days, you get angry, you bang the table. I'm out. In your unemployment, you think very deeply, and within 3 days you get an email. You have mail. And your friends email you and they say, Hamza, we were just planning a birthday party. And that's human beings for you. Human beings take the past, take baggage, take our interpretation of the past, or even our drama, and we superimpose it on other people. This is why if I were to ask many non-Muslims in the room, what do you think of the word Islam or Muslims? Maybe certain things will come up in your mind straight away. Terrorism, pugnacious, arrogant, they think they know it all, sectarian, segregationists. You could even see by the way some of you are sitting, yeah? As a manifestation of that. Also, if I ask the Muslims, what do you think of the word, for example, secularist or atheist? And the Muslims may say, and I've tried this out many times, cold, reductionist, don't have any emotions, aspiritual, all these kind of terms. And they're both wrong. We're both wrong. And that's the problem. The Muslims are at fault, and everybody else is at fault too. It's a human thing. So I think it's very important in the beginning to really understand and divorce that pseudo-link between our drama and reality itself, because they're not the same thing. Guaranteed. So when we have this approach, we'll really be able to turn off our internal radios. Because those internal radios are those judgments, are the superimposing of that drama onto who we are. So I want you to turn that radio off so we can really connect with each other as human beings. Not as Muslims or as non-Muslims, but as human beings. And you need to turn off that radio. And if you don't think you have a radio, oh yes you do. Because even when I've been speaking, there's been that little voice saying, what is he talking about? What has it got to do with Shariah law? I've seen him on YouTube. He looks much fatter now. Yeah? I don't believe he's Greek. He looks Pakistani. Yeah? All those internal radios. Just turn it off. Turn the button off. Boop. So we could really connect with each other as human beings. So, Islamic law. Now before I get into the topic, I want to tell you how Shariah, Islamic law, has already changed your life. I want to tell you how Islamic law, the Shariah, has really made your life much better. I want to tell you how Islamic law civilized every single one of you in this room. Oh yeah, baby. Sharia law. It changed your life and you don't even know it. I'll give you 3 reasons. Reason number 1, presumption of innocence. Reason number 2, scientific progress. Reason number 3, tolerance. If it wasn't for Islam, we may still be killing each other. If it wasn't for Islam, you couldn't go to a court of law and say, that wasn't my weed. If it wasn't for Islam, you would not have an iPad or an iPhone. I know it's upsetting you, man, but I'm going to tell you why. I'll give you references, and it won't be by Mr. Mad Mudla. It will be by normal Western historians. But the reason we get upset is, how could Islam do such a thing? Stupid old Islam. How? What's the matter with Islam? They ain't doing nothing good for us. These backward guys who wear skirts. But that's the whole problem, you see. But when we get academic on the issue, you'll see I'll open a whole array of evidences and references for you to wake up. For everybody to wake up, because we're all sleeping. Of course we said, you know why? Because it's so easy to be in our little clique. Oh, I define myself as a humanist, secularist, atheist. Therefore, that's all I know. I define myself as a Muslim, and that's all I know. But we need to wake up, people. We need to smell the Play-Doh. Play-Doh, not coffee, because we're still children. And that's why we need to change the reality, people. Really scratch the surface, not just listen to Sky News and Fox News. It's a shame that we live in the 21st century and you have Muslim and non-Muslim organizations such as the Atheist Alliance, etc. They still use social media and they have outdated cliches about other human beings. Why on earth? What's wrong with these people? Haven't they been breastfed? Honestly, there's no humanity in these people. How can you really get a brush and tar everyone with the same brush? How can you do that? How can you not scratch the surface a little bit further? And I'll give you a good example. When I was in an island, when I was visiting the atheist conference, people would ask me, Hamza, do you get stoned in Islamic law, yes or no? And then I said to them, you know what? Do you believe in abortion, yes or no? Oh, well, it's not as simple as that. Oh, so for me you want yes or no, but for you it's a newest discussion. So I replied by saying, in the Sharia, in Islamic law, you know drugs are forbidden so we don't get stoned. But the point I'm trying to say and highlight, people, is that we really need to wake up and just really scratch the surface. And shame on all of us, because guaranteed there's Muslims in this room may condemn democracy, but they have never read Plato's Republic or know anything about democracy. There's Muslims in this room that condemn liberalism, but they don't even know who John Stuart Mill is. And there's people in this room who condemn the Quran, have never read the Quran or an exegesis before, or only look for what they want to see. So it's both sides, people. It's both sides of the story. And I think I'm in a good position to talk about this because, yes, I come from a non-Muslim background. My dad's a secular humanist, stroke spiritualist, stroke philosopher, stroke confused. So, and I converted to Islam. So I think I've got both legs, whatever you call it, on both sides to really understand the different perspectives. So, these 3 things. Let me start with the first one, which was the presumption of innocence. Now, if you look at the history of the presumption of innocence, we know there are very contradicting kind of views on how we develop the presumption of innocence. But I'm going to talk about from a specific European-centric context. And I would argue that Europe developed the presumption of innocence as a result of Islam. Because King Louis IX, he basically traveled to the east. And he basically met a monk. And if you could read Jean de Ville, his chronicler, you could see details concerning this. And he met this monk, and this monk talked about that he read the Bible, he read the Quran, the book of the Muslims, And he even quoted a prophetic tradition of the Prophet Muhammad, upon whom be peace, with regards to justice. And then he went back, and King Louis IX developed the presumption of innocence. Before that, do you know how we would know someone is innocent or guilty? They'll fight a duel. If you win, you're innocent, or you get burnt alive. And if you survive somehow, you're innocent. And if you read the works of Marcel Boissard in his journal that was published in the Journal of Middle East Studies in 1980, you see that he quotes Jean de Ville, the chronicler of King Louis. And this article highlights and elaborates upon the fact that Islam had a core influence on the presumption of innocence in European Western legal theory. All from the Shariah, all from Islamic law. And his article is called On the Presumption of Innocence, on the probable influence on the presumption of influence. So check it out. It's in there. Not by Mr. Abdullah Yaqubi or Osama bin London. Yeah? It's actually by a Western reference. And this is not a historical accident, because we know the presumption of innocence was born when Islam came in the 7th century. Because Islam resonates with teachings of justice, as the Quranic discourse says 3 times, Inna Allah yuhibbul muqsiteen. Indeed, God loves the just. Also the Quran says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu kunu qawwamina lillahi shuhada'a bil qisti wa la yajrimannakum shana'anu qawmin la'alla ta'dilu. O you who believe, be steadfast witnesses in justice for God, and do not let the hatred of others make you swerve from justice. Be just, for that's closer to your duty. And we know in the prophetic teachings of the Prophet Muhammad, upon whom be peace, he said, be conscious of oppression and injustice, for it's going to be darkness on the day of judgment. We know the second caliph of Islam, the companion of the Prophet Muhammad, upon whom be peace, Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu, may God be pleased with him, he set out amazing principles with regards to a judge and how he should act fairly and be just and presume the innocence. So it came from Islam directly. This is Sharia, people, and it's affected everyone's life in this room. Many of you have been to court, or you know someone who's been to court. The presumption of innocence, direct influence from, yes, the boogeyman, Islamic law. Second point, scientific revolution. It is argued that if it wasn't for the justice of Islam and the tolerance of Islam when it conquered other nations, and that tolerance and justice to create that tranquil environment for people, Muslims and non-Muslims, to seek and explore the interconnecting principles of nature, if that wasn't in place, we would not have the Renaissance, and we would not have the scientific revolution of the 15th and 16th century. If you read the works of Professor Thomas Arnold, the Arabist and the historian, he claims and he asserts that if it wasn't for Islamic Spain, we would not have the Renaissance. We wouldn't have that essential historical milestone for all of Western scholarship to use as a springboard to take them into the trajectory of the scientific revolution of the 15th and 16th century. Because it was Islamic Spain, as a result of the principles of Islam, the just principles of Islam, the social and political governance, to allow minorities to live with each other and amongst each other and to educate themselves. If it wasn't for these principles emanating from the prophetic traditions and emanating from the Quran itself, we would not have the scientific revolution. This is why when the Christians took back Toledo, what did they find? They found manuscripts on mathematics, geology, geometry, astronomy, sciences. And they took them and they translated them into Latin and other languages so they could really explore these sciences that we take and we hold for granted today. For instance, there were 2 interesting gentlemen. And you can check this out on a BBC documentary for yourself. It's called When the Moors Ruled, I believe. Daniel of Morley and Adelaide of Bath They traveled from England all the way to Toledo and took manuscripts. And they took these manuscripts back to where? Oxford. And it is argued that they created the first institution, which is now called Oxford University. So outside the front door of Oxford University, you should say in Arabic writing, Alhamdulillah. All praises are due to God. Because if it wasn't for God that revealed the Quran and the prophetic teachings to allow that tranquility in Islamic Spain, for the scholars to arise, to develop these manuscripts, and then the Western scholars to come and translate them and develop them further and take them back to Oxford, maybe Oxford University wouldn't be around. I'm not saying it's only Islam that did this, but here you go, the Shariah has affected our lives today. This is why the science that you see today is as a result of this kind of historical milestone called Islamic Spain, which was as a result of the Quranic and prophetic teachings. This is no historical accident, because the Prophet Muhammad, upon whom be peace, he spoke about clearly about the rights of the minority, of the rights of the other. When he even said clearly that whoever harms a dhimmi, which means a non-Muslim under our protection, harms the Prophet himself. We saw the furore that happened as a result of the Danish cartoons. 100 people died, embassies were burnt. But the Prophet is saying, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, upon whom be peace, you harm a non-Muslim under protection, you're harming the Prophet. So imagine the type of furore that would exist in Islamic governance when a non-Muslim is treated unjustly. And we have classical scholarship in the 15th or 16th century to substantiate this. Imam Qarafi, he elaborates and elucidates upon the Quranic and prophetic principles on how to treat the other. He said, if they harm you, tolerate their harm. He said, be just. Advise them on their affairs. And this links back to the prophetic teaching of لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يحب لأخيه ما يحب لنفسه. You're not a true believer unless you love for others, for what you love for yourself. And this is not Muslim brotherhood, it's human brotherhood. And now we collected this hadith in the Arba'in, in the 40 hadiths, the 40 prophetic traditions that he collected together. He says this means human brotherhood. Musnad Ahmed, another tradition, it talks about people in general. So these principles facilitate that. Now this doesn't mean other isms and schisms don't have these principles. I'm not saying that. But I'm saying we have historical precedents, people. Thank Islam for your iPhone. Actually, if you don't even believe in Allah, thank Allah for your iPad. Because if it wasn't for Allah that revealed this tradition, maybe you'd still be wearing hairy boots and drinking each other's blood from each other's skulls. Because it was religion that civilized you. Religion civilized the West. Honestly. And these people argue for a secularization thesis, these people will take your clothes off again. Honestly, if you read our history, it was religion that civilized the masses. Right, you might think aspects of it are barbaric and so forth, but let's not be arrogant, people. If it wasn't for religion, you'd still be doing God knows what, especially in Northern Europe, especially in this country. Because there was no civilization here. See any monuments? Anything special that was a civilization in Europe? Where were the civilizations? Egypt, Greece, China? In Europe they were barbarians. When there was libraries in Africa, and there was libraries in the East, people in England, we, us, Brits, were still drinking blood and couldn't even speak almost. So let's not say, oh, we must be extremely secular. That's a joke, because it's religion that put your clothes on. Don't try and take them off now. Come on, let's be fair. So the scientific revolution. The final point is tolerance. Who said of John Locke? Good. John Locke, the amazing thinker who wrote various treatises on tolerance. He wrote on civil governance, and he's been attributed to forming, if you like, as a result of the medium of the founding fathers of America, the American Constitution. And John Locke was an interesting man because he came from an interesting period. You could argue just after the religious wars in Europe. And at that time, these thinkers were trying to formulate certain political models for human beings in Europe to live peacefully. And what is interesting that they looked to their right or to their left, to the east, for guidance. John Locke was heavily influenced by a gentleman called Edward Pocock. Edward Pocock was the head of Islamic studies at Oxford University, I believe in the 17th century. And Edward Pocock travelled to Palestine of the East to collect manuscripts and learn various things with regards to treatises on tolerance. For example, Imam Qarafi was from the 15th or 16th century, so I could imagine he probably took one of Imam Qarafi's manuscripts. And he went to Oxford University, and John Locke specifically says in his own words that there's no one else I like to sit in his lectures other than Edward Pocock. And he was heavily influenced by Edward Pocock to the point that John Locke wrote on civil governance. And on civil governance, do you know what he talks about governance? He says leadership, rulership is a divine trust, a vicegerency. Translate that into Arabic, people. Khilafah. The caliphate principles. John Locke, treatise of tolerance, influence, as a result of the Islamic tradition. You don't believe me? Go to Christopher J. Walker's Islam in the West. Christopher J. Walker's. Not Abdullah, or Yusuf, or Fatima, or Aisha, but Christopher J. Walker. Check it out, people. Now, it doesn't mean that Islam gave the West tolerance in general, but there's a heavy influence on a leading figure. So before we get into this debate, we need to start with thankfulness. Think about this. Because when you have a discussion, if you want the real emotional baggage, take your history. It's all your history, by the way. Whether you consider yourself a Muslim or non-Muslim, Brit or non-British, the point is it's your history. So when you come to the discussion of Sharia law, or Islamic law, Sharia, then come to that discussion humble. Humble yourself. The outrageous phenomena of Fox News, Sky News and all this bakwas, rubbish in Urdu, yeah? Chit-chat, rubbish. That they point the finger at the Islamic discourse when the very media and computers they're using in order to defame Islam is as a result of Islamic thinking. The algorithm, for example. Who developed that? Wasn't Mr. Joe Blogs, was it? It was Mr. Joe Muslim. So we need to be thankful. And it's a British kind of phenomenon. Fair play. It's a fair play. So now you understand your history. Now let's discuss Sharia in a contemporary context. This is the picture that's painted on Fox News and other narratives, okay? You have a big scary guy who's brown. He has a beard up to his belly button. Okay? And he's standing outside Tesco's. And you have a niqabi, a woman who covers her face, just leaves her eyes to see the road, with a big cloak. Many of you call it a walking sleeping bag. And inside that cloak is a massive sword. And she's standing on his left. And there's a poor white kid from Leicester. He's so hungry, he runs into Tesco's to steal his favorite cookie. Big Muslim beard guy looks at him and he gives the niqabi a nod. He basically runs after him, trips him up with his beard, she jumps, takes the sword out and goes, Allahu Akbar, and cuts his hand. This is the cartoon, the caricature of Islamic law portrayed by these irresponsible people from and via the Western media. That is jungle justice. That this is the kind of people who are bloodthirsty people. And this is a shame. Because the Sharia is a 1400-year-old legal system that has intricate details that has an amazing principle that actually solves many problems that we have today. And I want to contrast the Islamic social model with its criminal code with the liberal or the individualistic model. Now, it is arguable that Britain and America and other European nations live in a liberal society. The politics we adopt generally in the West is that of liberalism. I know it's a disputatious doctrine with many strands, but the foundations philosophically for liberalism is what you would call atomism, in the words of Professor Charles Taylor, or in the words of Professor Malin Friedman, a feminist political philosopher. Yes, I'm a Muslim and I'm quoting a feminist. I'm proud of that. Because today's feminism has developed far greater than that silly reaction that we had of, we should be like men. Yeah, making man the yardstick for women, which is another slavery really, isn't it? You don't even know your nature, you want to be like the man. That's just a reaction. But today's feminism is quite very detailed, especially if you read the works of Diana E. Russell and Marilyn Friedman. They don't react to that narrative. They say, okay, look, what does it mean to be a woman? Is it just a social construct? Let's have a discussion. It's very good that these things are happening, especially in the field of feminism, which is actually a category within political theory, feminism. So, the basis for liberalism is what you call individualism or atomism. Now, in the words of Professor Malin Friedman, individualism is the idea of the self, the idea of you, of the individual human being, that is an abstract entity divorced from social attachments. That is individualism from a political perspective. And I would argue, just like Professor Will Kimlicka argues, that most of liberal theory is underlined by this aspect of atomism, of individualism. And atomism and individualism, in my humble opinion, has destroyed our societies. We have social fragmentation and decay as a result of excessive individualism, which is a result of liberal theory. This is why David Cameron, or for many of you, Dawood Kamran, he basically said, broken Britain. And the shameful thing is that when it comes to Western society, when there are issues in our society, what do? We blame people. We don't blame the system. But when we look at Muslim societies, we don't blame the people, we blame Islam. Look at that, double standards. Double standards. Makes you want to swear. Damn. Yeah? That's the only swear word I'm going to do today, okay? Don't you see that? It's quite amazing, isn't it? We look at our Western society, oh, it's that guy's fault. It's those black people in Hackney. Yeah, read between the lines, people. When you read these papers, that's what they're saying. It's those black people, honestly. Or the Muslims, or the brown folk. Generally, it's like that. Blame them. Don't blame us. Our system's the best, can't you see? But when we look at the problems of other societies, oh, it's not the people, they're just enslaved. It's Islam. This is what you call a cultural superiority complex. And it's sick. And it just emanates from the ego, because I want to be better than the other person. Who are you, scumbag? I'm whiter than you, for God's sake. That kind of ridiculous cultural dominance. So, where were we? Individualism. Individualism has caused social fragmentation and decay. Because individualism, if it's propagated, and the reason it's propagated, because if you read the works of Professor Will Kimlicka, political philosopher, he says in liberal theory, you have to have this principle neutrality, or this principle distance. What that means is that the liberal government can't say what the good life is. In political philosophy, it's called the conception of the good life. For example, it won't really say to you, everyone must be compassionate, and this is what compassionate means. Everyone must be caring, and this is what caring means. Everyone must be this and moral, and this is what morals mean. Liberal government can't have that. This is why in political theory, in a liberal society, you have a marketplace of values, and there's a competition amongst the people that discuss these values and have a competition. The problem with that is those with the most money and power are going to have more influence, and they'll benefit. And they'll have their own conception of what they think the good life is. Now, this is very important to discuss. The reason it's very important to discuss is because in absence of a government saying this is the conception of the good life, you have social fragmentation and decay, because the individualists, or what I would call the corporate elite, the capitalists, will use their wealth and power to say this is who you are. You're not a human being, you're a bling bling. You're what you should buy. That's why consumerism has tightened its grasp around our necks. Because consumerism is, you don't know what needs. You don't know your own needs, and they're infinite. I know what needs you have, and by the way, I have a product for you to fulfill that need. Think about the concept of a stupid iPad. It's between an iPhone and a laptop. It's in the middle. You never needed it before, but now you think, my God, I could never run away with it. It's mine. I can't live without it. Yeah? Now imagine there's going to be something in between an iPad and a laptop, maybe called the iPod or something. God knows. You have all these intermediaries, yeah? And it's ridiculous, and that's what consumerism does, doesn't it? So the point I'm trying to say is, in a liberal society, you'll have excessive individualism being pushed. And this is why I would argue that the England riots was as a result of just normal youth not being able to define themselves anymore, because they used to define themselves with the new Nike trainers. Or, look at me, I have a mobile phone, the best one, the latest one. Or I've got a brand new 50-inch TV. Now, since the credit crunch happened, financial crisis, they can't buy these things anymore. So what happens? They go and steal it to find their sense of self now. Because that's what defines who they are, people. So individuals has not only made social breakdown a phenomenon, but it has destroyed our families. If you read the Children's Society report that was published in 2009, it's an amazing report, Children's Society report. It concluded that children in Britain and America are relatively more poor, are relatively more in less stable families than anywhere else in the world, and they conclude it's because of excessive individualism. This kind of, I'm alright Jack, what's in it for me? I was on the bus the other day, and do you know what it said on the bus? On the train rather? These seats are for the elderly and disabled. And underneath it said, this is required by law. Let me tell you something. Why on earth does that have to be said? That's an unwritten law. That should be done because human beings are not individualistic. But the reason the government and people who make these buses and stuff like that, you need those placards, this is for the disabled and pregnant women and those who are elderly, and it says this is required by law, what does that say about our society? That was so individualistic that we have to have a stick to remind us, hey, you're going to get in trouble if you don't allow this old woman to sit down. Don't you think? These subtleties in our society, although it's a crude example, but brings out the point that we do live in an individualistic society. So individuals, I would argue, has created social breakdown and decay, has created this atmosphere of what's in it for me. Because liberalism and individualism really emphasizes individual freedoms and individual rights. Now there's not a problem with these per se, but if you emphasize them, you lose the rights of society. What about the rights of society? Or the rights of the family? There is no balance here. And I would argue this has created other aspects of social decay. For instance, rape. Yes, you heard the word, R-A-P-E, rape. Liberalism has facilitated rape. Let me justify this for you. Don't get me wrong, Muslim mode is no good, yeah? You look at the Google indexes for pornography and rape and it is disgusting, yeah? But we don't believe the Islamic societies anyway because it's full of dictators that don't apply or implement the principles of Islam. But let's look at it from a context of our own home, Britain. Liberalism has facilitated rape, especially from a legal perspective. Because in Western legal theory, there are three values that have to be in an interplay with each other in order for law to manifest itself or come into play. And one of these values are individual freedom. Now, pornography has been legalized in liberal society, even pornography depicting violent or aggressive acts. If you look at the updates in 2000 and 2008, you see that they haven't really stopped aggressive acts. So pornography has been allowed under the banner of that really stupid legal value, your individual freedom. your personal freedom in an excessive sense. And I would argue, allowing pornography has facilitated rape. Let me give you the evidence. Diana E. Russell, a feminist, if you could find it, you can find it in Pornography and Rape, and it's published by Oxford University Press. And in her essay on rape, a multi-causal model, she says, although pornography is not the only causal factor, it's a multi-causal model, but it's one key factor. And she quotes statistics that 66% of all rapists, they quote and they refer to pornography as an inciting factor to rape. Obviously, look at it from a psychological perspective. If you watch pornography and you see excessive aggression against a woman, and the woman's all about pleasing the man, not the other way around, then what do you see? You devalue woman. She's just a piece of meat. She's a carcass. Think about it. Think about it. Yes or no? It's very simple. And also, Diana Russell looks at statistics in California, in America, at university, that 35 or 36% of all college students, university students, they would rape a woman. They would rape a woman if they could get away with it. Think about that. They would rape a woman if they could get away with it. And this relates to statistics from Amnesty International UK and others, that there are 167 rapes every day in this country. That's 90,000 a year. The ones that are reported, by the way. Even in America, there was a recent publication that said almost 20% of women are victims of sexual abuse in America. And I would argue this is because of individualism. If you allow something like pornography, then it's going to have an inciting factor, as per the research of the feminist philosopher Diana E. Russell. So liberalism has failed women from this perspective. Now let's contrast what we've just said with the Islamic social model. In Islam, it's totally different. It's based on a different fundamental philosophy. And this philosophy is best summarized in the prophetic teaching of the Prophet Muhammad, upon whom be peace, when the Prophet Muhammad said, and I'm paraphrasing, that society is like a boat. You have an upper deck and a lower deck. The upper deck gives water to the lower deck, but what the lower deck do, they make a hole at the bottom of the boat to take water, and the upper deck don't stop them. What happens to the boat? It sinks. So here there's an interplay between individuals and society and individuals. This is our conception of society. It's not excessively individualistic, but not excessively communist, that we're all the same. It has this balance between individual rights and social rights, but does see society as an entity of its own that does have an influence on individuals, and individuals have an influence on society. To prove this, anyone studying psychology, you know that the development of the social norm happens between two processes, due to two processes. It's called informational social influence and normative social influence. And these are processes that actually create or enhance the social norm. So this is a phenomenon amongst even Western academics in social theory or social psychology or sociology. So Islam has the correct view. So what does Islam do? It doesn't have a principle neutrality. It says, this is the good life. It takes the brave stance. These are morals. This is what compassion means. This is what justice means. This is the conception of the good life. So it doesn't leave it up to the marketplace of values for society to compete, so the capitalists can really define who you are via consumerism. Rather it says, this is the conception of the good life. So there are these values. On top of that, these values are propagated by the media. For example, what do you see on the media today? L'Oreal, because I'm worth it. Individualistic, right? But media from an Islamic perspective would be, look at the beauty of humanity. We're one, we're collective conscious, take care of each other. When was the last time you saw that on an advert? When was the last time we saw that on an advert? And if we did, it's very rare. And it was just like, maybe because of very rich Christians. Thank God, So the media doesn't affect us and influence us. Anyone studying marketing will see that everyone who studies marketing, forget studying it. People who work in marketing should be shot, especially when it comes to toys and children. Read the books about toys and children and TV, the way it's influenced our children so much that they've just become growing consumerists, growing individualists. It's terrible, and they do it purposefully. And they're destroying our children. These people should be hanged. If it was me, if I was the ruler, I'll put a law in Parliament that everyone who does marketing to children, especially in a consumerist sense, must be hanged. Because they've destroyed us. Our inclinations have been destroyed. Our natural disposition as human beings have been socialized to this almost a satanic perspective because of marketing, TV, buying toys, and all this crap, really. And it's dangerous. Take TV as an example. If you read the book called Remotely Controlled, you see that there are so many studies that children are actually remotely controlled via the TV. And it rewires their brain. If you see current studies in neuroscience called neuroplasticity, it shows that even children watching 20 minutes a day rewires their brain, affects them for life almost. My children, as an example, I don't allow my children to watch TV. If they do, it's very rare. It's at their grandparents' house. And my son sits with me in a course that I deliver to Muslims for 10 hours, no complaints, no noise. And all the mothers are like, wow, you're such a good parent. No, I'm a crap parent. I hardly see my children. It's a shame. But I just didn't let them watch TV. So they don't get used to ridiculous, fake, pseudo-stimuli. And they always have to be like all over the place, climbing the walls. My son can make a hovercraft out of toilet roll. He's only 4. And that's not because I'm great. I'm not. It's just one simple fact. Don't show them TV. Now, I'm not like a typical mad mullah religious guy saying TV is the Satan, yeah? I'm not saying that. But these are the current studies, read about it. So the point is, we have a conception of good life. We propagate these good values from and within society. Then on top of that, we have mechanisms in society to prevent crime in the first place. Mechanisms in society to prevent crimes in the first place. Because in liberal society, that doesn't happen. It's almost a fake sense of absolute freedom. Do what you want. As long as you don't harm each other. Whatever that means. Because how do you know your actions on the effect of society? What a stupid philosophy. It gets me angry, especially when I'm talking to taxi drivers. As long as I'm not harming anyone. How the hell do you know? Do you know what I mean? Kind of like sweeping arrogance. Yeah? How do you know your particular action hasn't harmed society? How do you know the very fact that you support a capitalist system hasn't destroyed the rest of Africa? Wake up. Do you know what I mean? People are mad. People are mad. I don't blame them because that's what they're fed. So what can you do? I'm going to have many rants in this talk, by the way, yeah? I've only had a few hours sleep, that's why. So, the point is that there will be mechanisms in society to prevent crime in the first place. For example, if you read the works of the criminologist Clive Hollin, he talks about that essentially that we always look at the laws, we never look at the context or the psychological, social circumstances making someone do crime in the first place, like theft. Someone steals something is because they want to make a financial gain. Why do they make a financial gain? Because this capitalist society and consumer society is saying, you define yourself by your nice car. You define yourself by the way you look, or that stupid little brand in your glasses that you can't even bloody see. Do you see the point? It's a joke. Now Islam won't have that situation because we don't say, in Islam you're not allowed to have subliminal advertising, for example, or unjust marketing campaigns, or an imbalance of the agitation of these instincts. Islam will not allow that. So it prevents it puts mechanisms in place to prevent crime in the first place. Because we're social animals, people. Then on top of that, we have a very just system. We don't believe in beyond reasonable doubt. It has to be almost conclusive, 99.9% sure. Not just reasonable doubt based on circumstantial evidence. I was reading about circumstantial evidence the other day. I was like, oh my God, someone could get put in for life based on circumstantial evidence? That's an inference. You're just reasoning to the best conclusion. It's like, oh my God, you could really destroy someone's whole life. Yeah? And the reason maybe Western legal theory has developed this way is because they were very individualistic. They didn't want to sort people out by values. They wanted to sort them out by law. Look at the Labour government a few years ago. There were more ASBOs than anything. More new laws put in place as if that's going to really change people. You can't change people by the stick. And that's what Islam says. It's values. It's worldview. It's your foundations. Well, how do you see man life in the universe? That's going to change you. So we don't have beyond reasonable doubt. We have almost impossible criteria. Because the Prophet Muhammad upon him be peace said, it's better to release 9 guilty people than have one person have been inflicted by a punishment that's innocent. And finally, on top of that, we have what we call suitably harsh punishments. Not barbaric punishments, suitably harsh, and they're not there to be implemented all the time. They're there as a deterrent effect, as the Quran gives us our philosophy of crime and punishment, which is a deterrent effect. A deterrent effect. This is why cutting the hand of the thief and stoning the adulterer and stuff like this is not meant to be applied on everyone. It's a final straw. When someone escapes the cohesive values, they escape the propagation of these values, they escape the mechanism of society to prevent crime in the first place, and they escape the criteria that are so almost impossible to be fulfilled for punishment to be implemented in the first place, then they probably deserve the punishment in the first place if they escape all of that. Do you see? We should not see Islamic law in context of liberal law and the way liberal society works. It's totally different. Because the way we change people is via values, not via law. This is why in 1400 years or 1000 years when the Shariah was implemented properly in history, handful of people got punished. 11 or 12 or 13 or 14. So it shows it's just there for a deterrent effect. Even now in Saudi Arabia, by the way, I do not consider an Islamic environment has injustice, doesn't have transparency, has a capitalist model for economics. It's not Sharia in any shape or form. But even then, in the courts, when someone knows that they deserve their hand to be cut off, for example, for them to be stoned, or whatever the case may be, they give them a way out. Because the Prophet taught us to give people a way out. Are you sure you're not married to her? Are you sure you know the law? No, I think you do. Yeah, it's almost like that. I know, Shaykh Haytham al-Haddad, a scholar in this country, he's from Saudi by his Palestinian origin, he was talking to us about how when he was sad, he was being a jurist, he was going to be a jurist. He actually saw this, people giving everyone an excuse because it's there for a deterrent, not to be implemented. This is why the Prophet Muhammad upon him be peace, he turned away many times when someone said, please purify me, I did this sin, for example, I did this crime. So it's a suitably harsh punishment based upon this model. Now you may still disagree with it, but now you see it in its profound context, based upon these mechanisms and models and layers of society, rather than thinking, oh, if it was implemented in London, then everyone's hand would be cut off. That's not true anyway. Take adultery as an example. The punishment of adultery has to be inflicted on someone as a result if full witnesses, pious witnesses, saw the act in public. Because if you spy on someone or see in someone's house, you're not pious anymore, because it's a sin in Islam to spy and look into someone's house without their permission. Do you know that? It's a sin, so you're not pious anymore. So full pious witnesses have to see the act in public. And the scholar said that the pen has to go in the ink pot. I think you know what I'm saying. Yeah? Okay? It has nothing to do with writing your late essays, okay? So, and their testimony has to be accurate. So if someone had a birthmark, for example, and they got the leg wrong, then they all get whipped 8 lashes. Do you know that? They get, because then there's a deterrent thinking, I'm not going to be a witness because maybe I was wrong. You get 8 lashes for false testimony. And that again preserves the honor of the woman from that perspective. So, there's so many more criteria. And I remember one scholar was saying this to a non-Muslim, just average Joe blog. He said, wait a minute. If it has to be done in public, and you have to see it, the pen going in the ink, and you have to have these witnesses, and they have to be pious, and you have all this criteria, they have to be of the age of puberty, and you have to have exactly the same testimony, etc., etc. He said, then if they get caught, then they deserved it. Because not even Soho, London, we have these things happening in public, yeah? Do you see? So we have to see this in context. Muslims are not bloodthirsty. This is a deterrent. We don't want it to be actualized, okay? This is the prophetic tradition. And let's talk about law with regards to rape. Ken Clark. Yeah, Ken Clark, the guy who doesn't really respect women in my opinion. He's a conservative dog, in my view. And the reason he's conservative, and I'll say that in his face, because for rape, he wanted people to get in prison only for 1 year. For rape! 1 year! Do you know what happens to a rapist in Islam? She doesn't need 4 witnesses. It's called under the criminal category of hiraba. And we have this stupid woman called Maryam Namazi, who is an apostate from Islam, knows nothing about Islam, she's just a reactionary, she's a joke. She always claims to everybody on TV and everyone, oh look at Islam so bad, when a woman's raped you have to have 4 witnesses. Just learn Islam, learn Arabic, you twit. She's a twit. Of course she's a twit. And she deserves that because she blinds a lot of normal non-Muslims who really want to know what Islam's about, and she just takes them down the wrong path. And she says, oh look what happened. It's not. Rape is under the category of hiraba, which means highway robbery. And the reason it's like highway robbery because someone's stealing the honor of a woman forcefully. And she doesn't need 4 witnesses, her witness is enough, and DNA is enough. And do you know the punishment for a rapist? In a criminal court with all the conditions, etc. There are various options, but some of the options include crucifixion, death, cutting the left leg and the right arm. Good. Of course it's good. This is compassion. A woman has a high status than a man in Islam. Because she's the first teacher of the scholar and the first protector of the mujahid. The one who defends the Islamic State for Muslims and non-Muslims. And this is why when Salahuddin Ayyubi was fighting Richard the Lionheart, you had Jews and Christians fighting with Richard the Lionheart. Okay, to protect, because they saw Richard Lionheart as a colonialist, for instance. And by the way, I don't know how we Brits like Richard the Lionheart, because one, he wasn't even born in Britain, he was born in France. I don't think he could speak English. And you know what he said about London? He said it's a shithole. Or something like that. So it's just a joke. I don't know why the heck we revere him so much. Yeah. But the point I'm trying to say is a woman has a really high status, and she's the central role of the family. And that's why the Prophet Muhammad said that paradise, the keys to paradise are under the feet of your mother. So the point is, if someone lays a hand on such a woman or rapes her, it's equivalent of raping the whole society or harming the whole society. So we have harsh mechanisms to prevent that. If you really did it, then you're going to get the worst punishment because you've destroyed the foundation of our society. That's how Islam honors the woman, not Ken Clark, or that conservative muppet who's saying, oh, they give them 1 year for rape. What a joke. Think about this. Think how Islam honors and values the woman from that perspective. So Sharia law is the solution, obviously, because what I said is true. But on a non-arrogant, no, I'm not being arrogant, it's going to be jokey, yeah. On the final thing I want to ask is something more general that would really maybe engage with all of our hearts. It's 2 things. First thing, Sharia law is not just about crime. Sharia law is also about the rights of the neighbor. Do you know that? The Prophet Muhammad, upon whom be peace, he was so worried about the rights of the neighbor that he thought the angel Gabriel, via revelation from God, would tell him that your inheritance, some of your inheritance has to go to your neighbor. If you read the classical traditions or classical works from the scholars like Al-Ghazali, the 11th century theologian and philosopher, he wrote a whole list of things that we have to do to our neighbor, whether they're Muslim or non-Muslim. And that is to take care of the emotional, mental health and physical health. If you see your Joe Bloggs next door neighbor, he's got his ties halfway down, he's hardly shaven, he's got empty beer bottles, and he's walking to work really depressed every day, walking back from work rather, really depressed every day. And as a Muslim, you never inquire about his well-being, you'll be accountable on the Day of Judgment. This is the reality of being a neighbor in Islam. You have to, when you cook, give them food. When they smile, you should smile. When they're unhappy, you're unhappy. You're almost mirrors of each other. So the rights of neighbor are an amazing thing. Also, we have to take into consideration that Islamic law also includes purification of the heart. Purifying this thing. The heart, qalb. In Arabic meaning something that wavers, because the heart is always changing, isn't it? So, Islam is about the inner dimensions of how to purify your heart. As God says in the Quran that you won't be safe on the Day of Judgment unless you have qalb salim, a pure, a sound heart. And this is the Quran. It talks about the heart a lot. About the soul, about the nafs in Arabic, and how to really suppress and kill the ego. It talks about your slavery. This is why Ibn Qayyim, the 14th century theologian and philosopher and jurist and polymath, he said that if you want true freedom, enslave yourself to God. Because the man in the corner never chose that he's going to be white. He never chose that he was going to be a man. You never chose that you're going to be Pakistani or Bengali. You never chose you're going to be black. You never chose that you're going to be both. You never chose these things, people. And don't say, yeah, freedom, fight for freedom. Bull. If freedom is you were born, you had a microchip, and you say, I don't want that, mum. I want to be a boy. Actually, I want to be a girl. Actually, I want to be both. I don't want that dad, he's poor. I don't want to be born here, I want to be born in England. That would be freedom. But you know, you're a slave to your context. That's why the Enlightenment kind of philosophers, the postmodernist philosophers, like the existentialists like Kierkegaard and Heidegger, they made amazing points, very Quranic points, that the human being is thrown. They have this concept of thrownness. That you're thrown in reality and you have no choice. Sorry mate, you've been Bengali all your life. Yes, you're going to be a black man all your life. No choice. Yes, you're going to be a woman. No choice, people. You even choose your parents or your siblings. And you say you're free. You're a slave. And you're always going to be a slave. But the way to deal with it is by being accountable and being responsible and dealing with your context in the best possible way, which is a Quranic narrative. And the way to free yourself from your own ego, and the way to free yourself from the social ego, social pressure, is by enslaving yourself from the divine. This is what Ibn Qayyim said, the 14th century philosopher, jurist, polymath. He said to really free yourself, you enslave yourself from the divine, which frees you from your own ego and frees you from social pressure. This is Shariah as well. That's why the Quran says, are you going to follow your forefathers? Even if what they were doing, saying, was baseless? And the final thing is about economics. Capitalism, secularism, or secular capitalism, or liberal capitalism, whatever you want to call it, is the terrorism of the 21st century. Don't start looking at the Muslims. Yes, 3,000 people on 9/11, innocent people, we are all sad. But let's get over it. You know why we have to get over it? 20 million children every few years die because of the biggest weapon of mass destruction, which is debt and poverty from the IMF and the World Bank. And we're complaining about 3,000 people? Don't get me wrong, for the MI5 in the audience, I was really sad on that day, and I'm still sad. But I'm a human being, and I'm not stupid. Because only a stupid person will cry over this when 20 million human beings die because of the biggest weapon of mass destruction, and it's not bombs, it's not nuclear weapons, it's debt. And then they lie to us Brits. Go to this concert on end world poverty and you're going to solve everything. Oh yeah, you know, have your spliff and, you know, take some speed and have a laugh. And at the same time, give charity. Do you know how many concerts we need every day to pay the interest bill of one African nation for 1 year? Around 1,000 concerts. They're leading you down a stupid path because we're stupid sheep. We need to wake up, we're sheep. We're the feather in the wind. But we're forgetting that we must be the wind. And that's who we are. And this, look, if you check the UNDP report, 250 people earn more wealth than 2 billion people on this planet. In 1997 to 2000, approximately 20 million children died as a result of no food. Around 2 billion people live with under $2 a month or a day. 2 billion people, 1 billion people with no sanitation, electricity. And don't say, oh, you know, it has to be like that, that's how it works, that's life, competition, too many needs, not enough resources. Yes, according to the liberal capitalist philosophy, the unjust, fake philosophy that has no basis in reality. Because according to the Food Agriculture Organization, do you know how many calories we have on this planet? We have enough calories to feed 3 planets. 3 planets, people. 3 planets. But yet the capitalists are crazy and saying, oh, food crisis, price problems, too many needs, not enough resources. Rubbish, again. But the Prophet Muhammad, upon whom be peace, in the prophetic tradition, said that the son of Adam, the human being, all he needs is food, shelter and clothing. His geopolitical model is in line with reality, 1400 years ago. Because it defined our essential needs. It defined our central limited needs, which creates a philosophy of not excessive competition, but one of distribution. Also, Islam prevents interest. It prohibits interest, because interest is an impediment to the distribution of wealth. Because the whole economy of Islam, which is part of Shariah, Islamic law, is to ensure the just distribution of wealth. And that's the number one problem. Somalia, 10 million people are almost dying because of no food. In America, 10 million people are almost dying because of too much food, the obesity. It's true, they're fat. Don't get me wrong, a lot of this is with genetics. I'm fat as well, I'm 105 kilos, yeah? I don't look it. But the point I'm trying to say is from a social phenomenon. I'm not being personal to anyone. I'm not being fattest or anything, yeah? Because I'm fat myself, look, yeah? So don't worry, yeah? I've got the layers of the theatre like you have. Row 1, row 2, and row 3, yeah? I'm selling tickets fast. So the point is, people, yeah? Don't worry about that. So I'm not trying to be personal, look, oh, you're fat, you're skinny, yeah? Don't worry about that, yeah? What I'm trying to say is a concept. Get the concept. Who's seen Man vs. Food on Sky? Disgusting! Disgraceful! And people are starving. We've got too much food. Too much food. But the problem is the distribution. Gaddafi, the unjust tyrant. And by the way, if you read the Quran, you see the philosophy of history that tyrants rise and they fall. And hopefully, inshallah, God willing, the dog Assad would fall as well. May he be guided, or may his heart be ripped out very quickly. Honestly, because if I had a shotgun, I would shoot his face and laugh. He's evil. Evil! And if we don't think he deserves that, then you're evil. Honestly, if you don't think he deserves that, you're all evil people. Because look what he's done, killed 25,000 innocent people just because of power. And hungry with power. The ego, that's what the ego does, isn't it? But may he be guided. And if he doesn't get guided, may he be destroyed. So, Gaddafi, he died with about a couple of billion worth of gold. Somalia just needed 1 billion to solve the crisis. So the issue is the distribution of wealth. So, interest. Interest, if you have interest-based society, it is an impediment to the distribution of wealth. For instance, if I'm buying something, I have to pay more on interest, therefore I have less money in my pocket. But if I pay for it properly and I don't have interest and I have more money in my pocket, which means I can inject it back into society. Now someone may argue, well, you could hoard the wealth and keep it in the bank, but in an Islamic environment, there's no positive interest. It goes down 2.5% every year. So that's an economic stimulus for you to inject it back into society, for you to engage in entrepreneurship and businesses. It's an amazing model. Also, the natural resources belong to the people, according to the prophetic tradition. If so, Saudi Arabian populace, they knew, or even the rest of the world, Arab world, with all the oil, that black gold, as they say, yeah? If they knew the prophetic tradition of the Prophet Muhammad, upon him be peace, which is in Tirmidhi, the collection of Tirmidhi, I believe, that people are partners in 3 things: water, pastures, and fire, which means generally the natural resources. The people are partners in this. So the government only has a delegated authority to use that wealth and inject it back into society. That doesn't happen in the Muslim world. There would be a revolution in the Muslim world if they found out this is their money. King Fahd, his hand must be cut off, for instance, for taking that wealth for himself. Sorry for you being Saudi Arabians. Any Saudis know I do apologize, yeah? Because I know you're brought up thinking that he's the best thing since sliced bread. So, and also the minerals themselves belong to the people according to other prophetic traditions. So you see, we're developing an amazing economic model. But let's talk about stability as defined as price stability and stability in general. Money in Islam is not free-floating like a liberal society. It has to be pegged on something substantial like gold and silver. And that creates more stability. Because when businesses are not devalued when there's more money in society, because when there's more money, it means there's more wealth. But in this society, when there's more money, it doesn't mean there's more wealth, because it's free-floating. It's not pegged on something substantial like the gold or silver. And that's why there'll be more price stability. And we saw this in the 15th century in the Ottoman Caliphate, in the Uthmani Khilafah, when you saw there was only 8% inflation in 82 years. That's a 6 months inflation for like Greece or something, yeah? So there was price stability. So this philosophy of distribution of wealth and the zakat system, which I said the 2.5% of your wealth to be distributed to the poor. And we have an unprecedented history for this. For instance, in 1453, you could find a letter from a rabbi in Philip Mansour's book, Constantinople, and the rabbi says to his brethren, come to the land of the Muslims, the Turks, rich are the fruits of the earth, we're not oppressed with heavy taxes. Also, we see that in history, if you go to Turkey, in Istanbul, the European side, you see the old mosques, and if you have a historical guide, you see these domes in these mosques. And the marble domes, and these used to be filled with gold. That whoever was poor, they could go and get the gold and put it in their pocket. And the historians say that these dome kind of baskets were always full, meaning everyone had food, shelter and clothing. Everyone had money. Also, you see in a time in history when the administrators had to collect the zakat, the spiritual tax, and then distribute to the certain conditions like the poor, etc. And they came back to the caliphate, to the caliph, to the sultan, to the ruler, and they gave him money. They said, we went to all of the land, and everyone has food, shelter and clothing. First time in the history of the universe that a state enabled everyone to have food, shelter and clothing. Say that to 80,000 homeless in this country. Capitalism sucks. And also there's a difference between private and public ownership in Islam. It's not a communist-based system, okay? So that's a little taster of the Islamic model. So you see that Sharia law is quite comprehensive. Who's going to deny that? You see Sharia law is timeless. Who's going to deny that? You see Sharia law makes sense with its own principles, axioms and models and values. Who's going to deny that? And if you want to talk about jihad as well, which jihad has often been described as terrorism, which it's not, because terrorism, according to the definition, is the killing of innocents for political cause, and Islam doesn't advocate that in any shape or form. Jihad is of two types: the jihad of the soul to deal with the blemishes of the heart and the ego, and also the jihad of the physical jihad, which we believe that sometimes after diplomacy fails, we have to basically engage in warfare to establish justice and peace. Because the Quran says, what is the matter with you? They don't fight in the cause of God for the oppressed people of the town, that they're saying, oh my Lord, when are you going to relieve us from this oppressor? Just like liberal interventionism, it's supposed to be humanitarian. This is why they went into Iraq under the false premise of weapons of mass destruction, but they didn't really give a damn about the Chinese or the shanty towns in Brazil or the African oppressors or whatever's happening, because it suits them, doesn't it? Or Islam Karimov of Uzbekistan that boils his political opponents to death and rapes the children and women and actually injects his political opponents with the AIDS virus. Look at Amnesty International UK, Human Rights Watch, check it out for yourself. America gives them like millions and billions of dollars of support. Islam Karimov. It's rubbish, nothing to do with humanitarian. Who the hell? How dare anyone say all these things are humanitarian? If it was, they would be in Syria yesterday. They don't care. Because Tunisia, was it Tunisia? Libya was more important. Because it was a British project, Libya. If you study politics properly, you see it had nothing to do with caring about the people. That was rubbish. That's why they were supporting the so-called jihadists in Libya. The irony. That's what happens in Western politics, it's based on benefit. And when the benefit gets stronger elsewhere, you break that benefit and you go somewhere else. Typical. So jihad is something very just. This is why Jews, yes, the Jews, and it's very shameful what happened just recently, apparently a Muslim killing innocent Jewish children is a disgrace. That's wrong and we disagree with that. Obviously he hasn't been trialed, he hasn't had any fair trial, anything, but nevertheless if it was him, it's disgusting regardless of background. But look what the Jews said about the Muslims. Zion Zohar, a contemporary Jewish historian, he said, thus when the Muslims crossed the Straits of Gibraltar, the Jews saw the Muslims as liberators from Christian persecution. Einar Gratz, a 19th century Jewish historian, he says the Jews lived favorably under the Mohammedans. So the point here is, brothers and sisters, we spoke about economics, liberalism, rape, social problems, jihad, everything. All the boogie men and all the hot potatoes under Islam. I hope I've demystified it. I do apologize for being brash or crude. It's not really like my style, but it's therapy for me. And also because I'm very tired as well. So that usually breaks down those barriers and you just speak more aggressive. Yeah? But I hope you've taken it with a pinch of salt. It's my way of expressing these things. Don't take it personally. If you have, I do apologize. Take the message, not the messenger, because he's irrelevant really, especially from an Islamic discourse perspective. Not to say that our message is irrelevant, I meant messengers post-messenger, like us, because we believe in Islam that all grateful thanks belong to God. We ain't doing, we're just tools that God uses to manifest His wisdom, His rahmah, His mercy, His compassion. So brothers and sisters, I'm really looking forward to this Q&A. I'm definitely sure there's going to be some interesting questions and answers. May Allah bless you, may Allah guide you, may Allah take care of you guys, and may He bless your life with guidance and the nur of wahi, the nur of revelation, and may He enable us to have a very peaceful society in Britain so we could all benefit from each other. Ameen. Amen. So, I end as Muslims do. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta. Wa astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Thank you very much for your patience.
Okay, thanks everyone for listening attentively, and I hope you all enjoyed the lecture. What we'll do now is we'll open the floor for questions and answers. If you do have a question, you'd like to put your hand up, or if you do have a piece of paper and you can write it down, pass it over to the front, and we can read it out and ask questions. I think we have quite a bit of time for the question and answers. So if anyone has a question, put your hand up straight away and answer. If it's not loud enough, can you just repeat your question again?
Less of a question and more, I think something needs to be cleared up. You stated that if the West gave a damn about humanitarian intervention, it would intervene in China. Well, that would result in the death of us all. And you mentioned Syria, and I support an intervention in Syria. There's actually a very interesting piece written by an international relations theorist called Marion Slaughter on the piece. I know she has an ironic name, but she's an interventionist as well. The West has tried and tried and tried to get legitimacy from the fast food organisation, the United Nations. But Russia and China has blocked it, and they will continue to block it, and Russia will continue to sell weapons to Assad, and there is nothing that the West can do, frankly. The West would want to intervene, but they can't. Not omnipotent. The US military is not omnipotent. They can't go in without the support of the United Nations in this case. And this is what we had in Libya. The US military didn't really play a part. But we had UN support. You can't go into Syria without UN support, which Russia and China block.
Yes, I disagree with you thoroughly. What I mean by West is small W, not big W, yeah?
Yeah, well, I mean...
the ones who make the decisions now, that's what I mean. I'm not saying Western people, I'm a Westerner.
Clear it up, I'll say NATO.
Yeah, see the point is, for us to be under the illusion that all these wars happen as a result of purely humanitarian grounds, I think you really have to be on cuckoo land, honestly. If you look at the foreign policy interventions of the United States in the past 50 years, you see that every single one of them is for their interest and their benefit. If it wasn't, they wouldn't be doing it. That's the nature of politics.
Why in that case would the Iraqi government give a huge oil contract to China?
What's that got to do with America?
Precisely. The United States, you state that...
Wait, are you saying to me that America intervened because it was purely humanitarian? Is that what you're saying?
Absolutely not.
Oh, there you go. That's what I'm saying.
But
that's what I'm saying.
What I'm saying is that it was not simply an oil grab.
No, of course not.
The United States' oil resources almost as large as Saudi Arabia, so it doesn't really need to get...
Yeah, no. It was more strategic as well. It was strategic. It was to prevent another hegemony from arising in the Middle East. There's a whole load of issues there. So it's to do with their interest. It's nothing to do with humanitarian grounds. For us to believe that would be, it's just a joke. It means that we haven't understood Western politics. It's not even Western politics, it's politics in general. People do things for their interests and benefits. You hear it from the mouth of Obama all the time. American interests, American interests, American interests.
Well, Obama's a realist.
Yeah, I know he's a realist. Yeah, fair enough. But the point I'm trying to say is, what I mean by West, by the way, is not the big W, it's the small W. The ones who currently have the strings that they pull, okay? I don't mean us, West, yeah? We're nice guys. You're a nice guy. You're very articulate, nice leather jacket. You know, you're supporting interventionism in Syria, so do I. So there you go. So don't get me wrong, I know what you're saying. But generally my point I'm trying to say is that generally the foreign policy has been led not for humanitarian purposes, but for more benefit-driven purposes, which is a shame. Whereas Islam, the Islamic intervention would be different. It would have to be, according to the values, practice is different. It has to be based on genuine oppression and genuine and to establish the justice and harmony of Islam. Yes, sister.
Yeah, you mentioned a very interesting point on the CTO link between reality and drama, and how important it is to be alert, to make that point.
Yes.
But again, there is also the CTO link as well. This link of linking everything to that is scientific. If we look at the book Thinker, Taker, Spinner, Spy, I don't know how many people have read this book, but it's a very important book that reveals how some scientific studies are not actually scientific studies, they are fake studies, yet science has been used as an opium to ignorance, like for example cutting funds on public services or cutting funds in education, and always making sure that they could provide evidence and scientific sort of research to support this perspective. Again, science is always being used for ignorance, and as you said, there is this imbalance between individuals and society's interest in general, and therefore religion in itself, once upon a time, was called opium to that progress and civilization, yet it is actually what we need. It's that spirituality, and those days, continental philosophies are actually calling to deconstruct that way of thinking. It's not only objectivity, but we are in dire need of spirituality as well.
Yeah, so your comment was
That
good.
was just a comment.
Yeah, it was a good comment, but totally unrelated to the drama thing. But it was a very good comment. Let me take one written. Assalamu alaikum. Is it true that a rapist has to then marry the woman he raped? And if not, Islam, where is it coming from? Well, it's nothing to do with Islam at all. It was written in the Bible. I think it's in Leviticus, I don't remember, but it's in the Bible somewhere, that you basically marry the woman you raped. That's your punishment. That's the kind of unjust, kind of draconian justice in the Old Testament. So it's not in any shape or form Islamic. Let's take one more. Documentaries, they're good to persuade. This writing looks like Chinese to me, by the way. I'm going to go back to it later. I need to wake up first. Okay, I understand what Islam says about interest. However, what are the consequences if someone takes out loan? Ask your scholar. I'm not a scholar, honestly, but there are some scholars who talk about there may be difference for education, and if you're in a non-Muslim country. To be honest, I'm not a scholar, so don't ask me. I'm just a guy with a big mouth. Yes, sir. Far right, far left. And maybe politically as well.
You're left, far right. You made a point about the Islamic contribution of science to modern society.
Yes.
That is something which I absolutely will not question. I worked as a volunteer in the Science Museum. We had an entire exhibition on the Islamic contribution to science. But just because those people then may, who are living by the belief system that you live by, made these contributions to science, that doesn't necessarily mean that those other beliefs were correct. I mean, for example, like contributions to science were made by people who believe that the sun went around the earth. That doesn't mean they're right about the sun going around the earth.
Yes.
Sure.
Is it a misplaced question, sir? The reason it's a misplaced question is because I never spoke about that these were Muslims. Some of them were Christian scientists and Jews. What I said was that the principles of governance facilitate the tranquility that allowed the scientists to develop. They didn't have to be Muslim. To be honest, frankly, some of them were apostates. Yeah, so it doesn't make any difference. My argument wasn't you being Muslim is going to make you a scientist. No, have you seen the Muslim world lately? I mean, not very much science going on. Yeah, I was talking about when the government, because remember, progress is a political phenomenon. Because when you have the right politics, you have the right progress. If you have a good ideology, you have the right progress. So the point is, when Islam as a political governance model was implemented, then it created that tranquility. For example, who's got a £20 note? Anyone? £20. Rich students amongst you. This is Leicester. Who's behind? I don't want it, bro. Just read behind it. Who's behind the Queen? Who's behind the Queen? Adam Smith, the 18th century founder of capitalism, of modern economics. You know what he said about the caliphate? He said the empire of the caliphs gave us that needed tranquility and principles of governance to allow people, Muslims and non-Muslims, to look into the interconnecting principles of nature. So it was I'm talking about the governance, these principles facilitate that. And I did say other models could do that too, like maybe secularism, capitalism, but the point I'm trying to say is we have historical precedents for that. Do you see? So it's nothing to do with intrinsically your belief, although I would argue that the Quran does make you think and reflect, as the Quran says, أَفَلَا تَعْقِلُونَ, do not use your brain, and gives you other methods of thinking. So, yeah, you come back to that.
So Shariah doesn't say that you have to follow the belief, it doesn't say that you have to believe in Allah.
No, it doesn't. Yeah, the beauty of Sharia law is that it allows minorities to come into play. This is why John Locke was influenced by, Edward Pocock was influenced by Islam about treaties on tolerance and civil governance. This is why in the Ottoman period, if you read the book, from Amnon Cohen, a Jewish historian, it's called A World Within. He said he collects 1,000 records under the Ottoman Caliphate. And in Islamic law, Jews could go to rabbinical courts, Christians could go to the priests, and the Muslims go to the Qadi, the Islamic judge. But he quotes and he states historically, the majority of the Jews didn't want to go to the rabbis. You know who they went to? They went to the Qadi, the Islamic judge. It's amazing. It's a 2-volume book, A World Within by Amnon Cohen. Also you have Richard W. Boulier, I think from Columbia University. He quotes in his book, The Case for the Islamo-Christian Civilization, that justice was meted out impartially, irrespective of religion. It's shocking, isn't it? Some people think, Islam's for religions, it's for Muslims. No, it's for everyone. Okay? Yes?
I actually just read the book by Koran.
Oh, good. I'm not read. Are you serious?
Yes.
No. Good.
For fun, actually. But I was wondering, if you implement Sharia law today, how would you, I know that in ancient times that the dhimmis would have to pay extra tax.
Yes.
How would you...
Dhimmis, yeah. The dhimmis don't pay extra tax. That's actually a myth. They pay tax as, like, for example, if you read the works of Rousseau, when he talked about citizenship as like a contract with the government, and that's how we see it. So basically, when non-Muslims live under the Islamic State, they'll pay taxes like Muslims pay tax. And by the way, Muslims' tax is much higher. And a male would pay it, not the whole family. Someone who can't afford it won't pay it. They'll be given money. And the tax is for them that they don't have to fight in the army. Muslims will protect those people regardless if they fight the army. They can if they want, but they'll be protected and their rights will be honoured, etc., etc. To the point that if a Muslim lived outside of the state, the dhimmi has more rights than the Muslim outside of the state. Amazing, huh? Yes, sir.
You made some reference about Fox and Sky News.
Yes.
How they dehumanize some kind of society rules and so on. Now, what I can't understand is the same media that you are referencing to see how Gaddafi and Assad are very bad.
Yes.
Now, what I can't understand...
I'm not actually.
Okay, sorry.
I've never referenced Assad. I've never referenced the BBC to show how bad Assad is. I know Gaddafi and Assad is bad because I know brothers of brothers have been tortured there and have been treated badly. So.
I can't understand any government standing by and watch somebody with guns protesting and calling himself a protester.
Yeah, but in all fairness, friend, if you go to Syria, you see that if you've been to the dungeons of Syria is that people get tortured and they get forgotten in history. They get killed. Any kind of, even small type of rebellion against the government, you get massacred. I mean, it's almost mutawatir. Mutawatir in Arabic is like recurrent reporting from so many different people in different places that to claim it's a lie is to claim a conspiracy. That's the first point. The second point is Gaddafi. I know of brothers that they were hanged and they were tied to a car and driven around a university. These were the brothers who were just giving leaflets out. What are you talking about? These guys were dogs. They are dogs. And if I had a gun, I would shoot them in the face.
How did you get your facts?
I know the brothers. And I know the brothers who know the brothers. What else do you want me to say? That's it, man. Look, it's a very great principle in Islam that you speak the truth and you be just even if it's against yourself. Kith or kin, rich or poor. And that's what we have to do. We need to speak up. Yes, sir.
Hi, yeah, you've mentioned you don't like Saudi Arabia, you're anti-Gaddafi, you're anti-Assad. That's great. So why isn't there a sort of Shariah law that is working in the contemporary world today?
Well, it hasn't been implemented. When it gets implemented, then maybe we can have a discussion.
Okay.
I'll give you an example. If you look at the Maryland poll, most of the Muslim world, 75%, wanted aspects of Sharia in their governments, but people are not doing it, they're not choosing it. Even in Egypt, the Ikhwan sold out. It's a shame, they just sold out, man. The Salafists and the Ikhwan, whatever you want to call them, they just sold out in Egypt because the constitution has to remain extremely secular. Also, you have to see the rest of the Muslim world, is when we say Sharia, what do we mean? Do we mean like small things like divorce law? We're talking about some comprehensive system here. This is what we're talking about. That is all interlinked. And that's not implemented in totality, unfortunately. And what I mean by Sharia is not this kind of crazy animal that's going to be ever expanding and take you over and just engulf you like an amoeba, or something, and say, you be Muslim or die. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about a beacon of light for the world. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, so I understand that. So the question is then, why hasn't it worked in these supposedly Islamic countries?
Well, in fairness, it's worked for 1,000 years. We have a better CV than secularism has. It's just these couple of 100 years, it hasn't been implemented. But if you do look at the history of Islam, you see a CV, 1,000 years of great history. And unfortunately, you see the bloodiest history under secularism. So the point is, what we need to understand is people who do call for it, they're in the dungeons and prisons. If you look at the prisons in Egypt, in Syria especially, loads of people who are calling for Islam in a non-violent political way, they have been tortured continuously. In Uzbekistan specifically, political opponents who give leaflets to say, Islam may be a solution for poverty. They get put in the prison, in the dungeons, injected with the AIDS virus, the fingernails are pulled out, the wives are ripped in front of them saying, denounce your Islam or we rape your wife. Amnesty International, Human Rights Watch, check it out. Uzbekistan. And that's why, because the kind of movement that's happening in the Muslim world is being squashed by these political powers.
So I could agree with everything you just said, but the point is that these are the very same Islamic leaders. These are Muslims committing atrocities on fellow Muslims.
Yeah, there you go, man. What a crazy disgrace, isn't it? Just like the Catholics who killed the Protestants.
Yeah.
And vice versa. It's a human... Bro, religion is supposed to change hearts, not change systems. If you change the system and not the hearts, you got nothing. It's like spraying perfume on a casket, or dressing up a mummy. You know a mummy? He's rotting inside. We got that from a Christian poet, by the way. Christian rapper. It's got like 90 million hits. It's called, what's it called? Why I Love Jesus and Hate Religion. There's a Muslim version as well. Why I Love Jesus and I don't know the rest of it. But anyway, let's pick another white face, of course. No, that white face. This one.
Well, in answer to this gentleman's earlier question, talking about apostasy and disbelief, you seem to make out that Sharia has a place in it for that. It's accepting in previous Islamic countries, for example, when there was that golden age of science, it was accepted. You've got many great things like reading up on history, and there is a great tradition of tolerance in those communities. But reading through the Quran and looking at modern, I know you disagree that they're not Islamic science, but modern nations representing that. They don't see that as tolerance. So what would you say the modern Muslim view is of apostasy and disbelief and tolerance for it? And would you say that most of the Muslim world embraces that today?
Well, there's different views on apostasy and disbelief. First of all, disbelief is a phenomenon, it's a human phenomenon, and disbelievers, if you want to categorize them as that, are always welcome in Islamic governance and Islamic society. Apostates are welcome too. The only difference is amongst Islamic scholarship is that they start becoming political apostates, which is tantamount to treason, and there's repercussions to that. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that, especially since we have treason in some countries in the West anyway. So it's a bit more nuanced. There are differences of opinion, but it's just, there you go. It's not like, oh, he's an apostate, let's go kill him. I mean, do we even know the conditions? We don't even know. We haven't read a basic A-level Sharia book. So many Muslims don't even know the reality of apostasy or whatever the case may be. But there is mainstream scholarship and other scholars who say that there are severe repercussions to the one who becomes a political apostate, which, fair enough, it's politics.
What distinction is there between a normal apostate and a political?
I don't know, I'm not a scholar, you'd have to ask a scholar.
Okay.
But I do know there are differences, that's all I could tell you. I hope that helps. Any other questions? Oh, you, of course, if you look at me for ages, do play with me. Those eyes can kill.
Back to what you were saying about the UN intervention.
Yes.
The situation in Libya, when it happened, before they intervened, there was a maximum estimate that Gaddafi had killed 4,000 people.
Yes.
But now some Human Rights Watch associations are reporting that the maximum civilian casualties after the intervention was almost 100,000. And now, if you've been following on the news, a part of Libya wants to secede, and there's a bit of tribal tension.
There is.
And also the NTC, the central government, it's not powerful. So there are actually more problems now in Libya facing the current Libyans, those who were oppressed and were not oppressed, than before the Gaddafi era.
Yes.
And now the current situation in Syria, Russia and China, one of the arguments for not backing an intervention is that they don't want a repeat of the Libyan scenario where there was a high civilian casualty. So what is the, I want to know what is Shariah's, what does Islam say about the situation? Also, in the Syrian situation, you have now some Arab countries are giving weapons to the opposition, which is causing further bloodshed.
Yes.
So one can look at it from a point of view that, okay, they're being oppressed, we have to give them something to defend themselves.
Yes.
Is that correct Islamically? And also, what is the Islamic solution to this? What does Sharia, what sort of solution does Sharia talk about?
I don't know, I'm not a scholar, but I can give you my thoughts though. My thoughts from my general limited reading, but I'm not a scholar, I don't have any reading on this. Take it as that, in that context. Don't start quoting, look at Hamza, he thinks he knows it all, he said you've got to do this. I'm not saying that, yeah? Now, we know that in the Sharia, you can't fight against the ruler, yeah? But a Muslim legitimate ruler. People forget to define that. Because you have this so-called Saudi lovers that say, oh, you can't do that to the Saudi king. But is he a legitimate ruler? First and foremost, let's discuss that. I'm not passing judgment, but it has to be a legitimate ruler. Now, there are other traditions that indicate that if someone disobeys God, you don't obey him. Yeah? Some people have taken that as a jurisprudential principle to disobey the ruler. Also, when someone gets attacked and killed, then some scholars have said that you can fight back. Now, with the case of Syria, for example, he's not a Muslim ruler. He comes from an Alawi tradition. He doesn't even believe in Islam. He is extremely secular. He's not implementing a Sharia model, or he's not implementing the values of Islam. And he's oppressing and fighting the people. In that context, what do you do? I don't know, but I've recently read a fatwa from 107 scholars of different types of persuasions from the political Islamic spectrum, and they all said, fight back. Jihad, that's what it is. In Syria, it's a legitimate jihad. That's what I've read. I don't know what my views are, I haven't read too much about it, but you have to realize as well that fitna is worse than, persecution is worse than killing. That's a Quranic point. Persecution is worse than killing. Because if you don't stand up to do something about it, you're going to have persecution for the rest of your life. What kind of existence is that? There's no honor in that. Is there honor in that? Or is there honor in standing up and fighting and saying, I'm going to try and change this nasty situation? And then when you die, you have paradise. Think about it. I don't know the ins and outs of what's going on, so I'm not going to pass any judgment in its totality. But these are some things that happen. That fatwa does exist. Sheikh Haytham actually published that fatwa on the Islam 21C website. Check it out. He's a respected scholar from Saudi. Yeah. So just check it out. I mean, yeah. Sorry, I'm not very helpful, bro. What do you think? You tell me. Someone asked me a question trying to catch me out. You tell me what you think. I want to know what you think.
I agree with your point that I'd rather fight back than to be persecuted. But I'm looking for, from an international point of view, what sort of solution can the Arab states offer?
Oh, the Arab states?
Yeah, because the Arab League, I think NATO didn't want to get involved in the whole situation again after the whole Libya scenario.
Yeah, I agree. I know what you're saying. I know exactly where you're going. Yeah, this is my advice to everybody, yeah? If the Arab states grew up, became legitimate in their own right, understood the power that they have, they could have solved every single problem in the Muslim world. All it takes is, for example, Jordan or another country to use its army and just to go and solve the Syria problem. That's what it takes. Use your army, they're supposed to be Muslim, use it for justice. The Turkish Prime Minister, I know everyone's in love with him, but I think he's a huge danger for the Muslims. He just has a big mouth. I hate a guy with a big mouth. I hate myself as well. Oh, so you think I have a big mouth, do you? When he kidding. He just has a big mouth with no backing. Oh, that's why he went to Egypt and they all booed him. Do you know that? They booed the Turkish Prime Minister because they said, look, you've been talking for so long. You've got one of the sixth biggest army in the world and you've done nothing for the Muslim world. And you're supposed to be like, taking care of everybody, yeah? So-called. Go into Syria, solve the problem. They couldn't even deal with the 2 journalists that got taken away. But a real Muslim army is when a woman was harmed, or when there's a situation, they would write letters to the dog of Rome, or to people saying, my army is going to begin with you and end with me. Because for justice, for the honor of the woman, for the justice of humanity. So I think what the Arab world should do, they should just let loose their armies for good causes, for legitimate causes, which is legal. It's legal under the UN. What does the UN say in Article 51? Article 51, or something like that, talks about that every individual and collective has a right to defend themselves. And this could be used under that premise. Why are those Muslim countries doing anything? What about the situation in Gaza? If Jordan woke up, Egypt woke up, other countries woke up, there won't be this kind of human prison. The irony. They forgot about the history of the concentration camp, but they made Gaza into a concentration camp, essentially. Let loose the armies, do something. Just show your might at least. Don't have a war, don't kill people, but say, look, we're standing, we're walking, we're at the border. Sort yourself out. Strike fear in their hearts because they're just getting away with murder. So I think the Muslim world has enough resources to solve its own problems. The only problem is a sincere leadership problem. We need sincere leadership. Don't we? But you know what the irony is, bro? Leadership comes from the people as well. Sometimes we always think the leader is going to solve all our problems. But who is the leader? He's just Joe Bloggs like you. So really, the leader is a reflection of who we are sometimes.
I think you can say that, but...
And that's why we need to change our hearts, bro. Because, let me tell you something, yeah? A leader could stand up and solve all our problems. Okay? He can. And he could take over the whole world and establish the peace of Islam. If he didn't do it for the sake of God, he's going to hell. So it's all about the heart anyway, bro. Really. All the actions. And that's why if the leaders have sincere hearts, they don't do it for the sake of the ego, others do it for the sake of God, and they do it right, then hopefully we'll have a better place in this world. It'll be a beacon of light for people. We want to solve Africa's problems as well with the economy, man. 20 million children dying every 3 years is a big problem. And Islam says, أُخْرِجَتْ لِلنَّاسِ. We're here for the people, لِلنَّاسِ. Not مِنَ النَّاسِ, not from the people, we're for the people. We've let people down. We have the solution, we're not using it. Yeah, of course.
Okay, I'm sorry. I came across an ayah in the Quran in Surah Al-Arad, and part of it goes, Allah will not change the condition of a people until they change what is within their hearts. So, apart from it being the leader, I believe, as you said, it has to be with us as well.
Of course.
If we don't have a revolution within our minds, then obviously we will still be sheep.
Yeah, of course we're going to be sheep, bro. And many of us are sheep, unfortunately, man. This is why the Prophet always said that we're shepherds in the hadith. He never said we're sheep. That's why we're not the wind, we're not the feather in the wind, we're the wind itself. We change the direction, yeah? And that's what he's doing. And for that to happen, you really need brave people. You need people that don't care about other people. Not from a humanitarian perspective, but don't care what they think. And the Sahaba, the companions of the Prophet, were like that. Very risky. They didn't care about social pressure and social norm. Get lost. This is the truth. Do you see? That's how people stand up. You know? Like Malcolm X almost, when he stood in the Oxford University with that amazing speech. Yeah, and he was really like kind of brave in his stance. We need people like that. I mean, the reason I'm using him as an example, because he's a 20th century example of someone who spoke. You know? And who was very, very brave with his words. And we snatch off their heads. Yeah? You see some of his YouTube clips. It's so phenomenal. Anyway. Yeah, wait, this someone new, yeah? You've spoken, sister at the back, all there at the back. Yeah, he was killed in a very horrible way. It's very bad. What do you mean? Are you allowed to kill him that way? Yeah, of course. You can't. Well, to be honest, I don't know. But a general principle is that you can't mistreat people even in acts of war, and you can't kill people in that way. And if you have to trial someone, you have to trial them. It's not jungle justice. That's a well-known principle in the Shariah. So yeah, there's no jungle justice. So when I heard the way he died, I you know what the first thing I said? If it's true that he was sodomized with a knife and stuff like that, I said this people's not going to have. There's no hope in these people. The minute you become like your enemy, you're finished. Get lost. That's why I said there's going to be no khair, there's going to be no goodness in this movement, because if the minute they adopt the position, they adopt just like what the enemy was doing, then they're one and the same thing. Don't get me wrong, it could be one guy who didn't follow what everyone else was saying, so it could have been just like an anomalous result. So, but it was sad the way he died, even though he killed lots of people. I mean, to do that. But it's a big sign from Allah, from God, to say, look what tyrants. You know, Allah is the King of Kings. You're nobody. You know? So, and it's a trust. Rulership is a divine trust. Sister with the brown hijab and glasses.
I'm from Libya, so it's very interesting to hear.
Sorry?
I'm from Libya.
Are you from Libya, yeah? Okay, that's good. It doesn't mean you know more than me, though. It doesn't mean you know more than me. I'm only kidding, man. I need some more water.
I just wanted to comment on some comments.
Yeah, sure.
First, I think you said something about secessionist movement in Libya, and that Libya is now probably worse off.
Yeah, the brother here, he said that Libya is worse off. More people died.
More people die.
And there's actually there's a sectarian factions happening.
Yeah, definitely. So essentially, I'll just say that what's happening now.
Wait, do you agree with that?
No, I don't.
Okay, good, okay, good. Well, say it first. Be brave.
Federalism in Libya, and we know that federalism is a bit different than secessionism, and also it's not a very large movement. There is some people that want to federal system, but it's not secession. And I would say personally that Libya is not worse off. Libya's situation for 40 years has been very, very bad. It's been systematic killing and oppression, and after a certain point in history, you can't go back.
Yes.
So even if you have suspicions of NATO, and you understand the reality of Western interests, you still, after a certain point, people have died, and people have intervened, and you can only change, you can't preserve the status quo. There's no legitimation to preserve oppression and status quo under Gaddafi just because you have suspicion to some degree over Western interests. I mean, when reality happens, you just accept it.
Sure. You guys can have this debate later.
To clarify, I wasn't supporting the Gaddafi regime. I was just saying.
Yeah, he's not a pro-Gaddafi, man.
No, I'm not saying. I'm making an extra point.
Don't you think he looked like Michael Jackson a bit, though?
Sorry?
Don't you think he looked like Michael Jackson, Gaddafi? A bit, didn't he? He had a lot of plastic surgery.
Michael Jackson, like you, that.
No, he looked like him.
No, Maybe.
They look similar.
Dress sense.
Yeah, the dress sense. Yeah, he's a bit crazy guy. Any more questions? Oh, yes, sir. Have you spoken? Yeah. Excellent. Speak.
Yeah, you've mentioned about the existing illegitimate Muslim rulers, and it seems that you categorize the legitimate ones would be hypothetically ones by the Shariah as you see it. I wanted to ask, are there any Muslim rulers that you consider legitimate by your own definition, and do you believe in democracy? Or is the ruler legitimate by the Shariah as you see it, correct?
According to that definition, I don't think there's any legitimate rulers. And the second point is, do I believe in democracy? There's a very famous poet called Muhammad Iqbal. He was called the poet of the East, and he summed up democracy in the following way. Not that I agree with it, but I just want to bring it as a rhetorical point. He said democracy is a system of governance that counts men but doesn't weigh them. And it's quite profound. If you read Plato, he actually didn't even like democracy and took it from him. That's why he wanted the philosopher kings. He said, how can you have for example, 2 million dumbasses telling us what to do? Yeah? That's why he advocated a philosopher king. I think there's problems with democracy. I think it's become the holy cow of the West. But I think it's why we should still discuss it. There are huge problems with democracy, because if everyone agrees to something, doesn't necessarily mean it's the right way forward.
What would you rather happen?
That's a different question, though. That's the interesting point. See, that shows that you want me to believe in democracy only. If the question's sincere, let's stick to the first point. Do I believe in democracy? And I said, there's lots of problems with it, and there are lots of problems with it. Huge problems, like especially you can't have democracy and capitalism. It doesn't work. There are theories now that are saying capital and democracy can't come together. They can't work together because capitalism per se has such a huge influence on people that is very undemocratic from that perspective. Yeah, and read it up for yourself. So the point is I think democracy, it depends how you define it. If you mean rule of law, justice and progress, well, I believe Islam has that already. Now, and it depends what you mean by democracy, because that is such a loaded term. What does it mean? But if you mean peace, rule of law, justice, accountability, transparency, I think the Islamic tradition has all of that.
If I said democracy to mean a government elected by the majority of the people, would you agree that's...
No, I think that's shallow. I think it's very shallow. Philosophically, it has actually no grounds to stand on. That's why Plato moved away from it. But democracy is not defined on that anyway. That's not... It depends what kind of British democracy, American democracy. It's all different because you can have more people vote. You can have the majority in America voting for Bush, but Obama gets elected.
Well, you could, I mean, these are electoral...
So your definition is wrong.
Well, I'm about the general principle of it rather than...
Well, the general principle is very abstract. I want practical examples. And what do you mean by democracy? The people who wanted to stand up, wake up, 30%, for example, who wanted to vote in some countries. There's vote apathy, for example. Is that a democracy? It looks like an elitist kind of people who are just interested in politics. Why do they deserve the right to have a say? You know, these are big questions.
Yeah, this is dodging the issue. Like, there are problems with democracies if not enough people vote or engage.
Yeah.
I'm saying, do you agree with the general principle?
No, I already said it was shallow. Of course I don't. Why would I agree with something that's shallow? I don't agree with it. Philosophically, it doesn't make sense to me. Although, don't get me wrong, when we say democracy, I agree with the flavor of democracy. You know, if it's a curry, I like the taste because it's transparency, accountability, aspects of individual rights as well. You have so many good things, which I agree with. But if you want to talk philosophically, that principle itself, I think it's shallow.
Okay, well, to turn it slightly, how do you think the government should be selected?
Well, in an ideal world, I think everyone should live under a nice, harmonious Islamic government. And if you have divine rule, that'd be good for you.
How would that be selected?
You just select your leader, just like you select here. The voting method.
By democracy?
No, of course not, because democracy is different. Democracy says that man makes the law. We say the law is not going to change, ever. Because we're saying the source of law is God. Democracy says the source of law is the mind. We're saying no. We're saying the source of law is always going to be the divine structure. But you select a man representing the divine structure, that's the thing.
And you vote for that man?
Yeah.
Democracy?
No. So you don't know nothing about democracy, man. Voting and democracy are two different things. Yeah, voting is a process.
You choose that man by the majority vote.
No, not even that way. It depends. It depends. There's different rules. Like for example, that you could have delegated people to choose on behalf of the people, which is not really democratic, or you could have a mass vote for everyone to choose a certain person. But that's not democracy. Democracy is ruling for the people, by the people. We're saying the ruling is for Allah. There's a difference. It's not from the people, or ruling is not by the people. There's a big philosophical difference. This is just purely procedural. How do you pick someone as a delegated authority? Because for example, we could never have a vote to say, let's vote if we're going to use Islam or not. Do you see? It's like almost a constitutional principle here that you can't vote against the constitution. But in democracy you can. Do you see the point? There's a little difference because we believe ontologically the essence, the reality of nature, of law is always going to come from the divine. Do you appreciate the difference?
Well, I sort of get what you're saying.
Yeah.
But
this is abstract and hypothetical.
There's two issues. Firstly, you think that this Shariah should be brought in, like there should be a democratic vote to bring it in.
Oh no, I didn't mean that. I meant if you already have a country that has Islamic governments, if a ruler dies, for example, how do you choose another ruler? That's the point.
And you don't necessarily think by the majority vote.
No, but the majority of that can be a solution. But in Islam, we have different hierarchies as well. The hierarchy is not based on race, color, creed, but it's based on intellect as well, and it's based on your level. For example, there are differences in people. Someone who's more educated in terms of Islamically educated and knows more about the inner dimensions of Islam and how to judge a person that's fit for rulership. So they will have a huge influence. It's not necessarily one vote, one person per se. To be honest, I don't know the intricacies that well. So this is all just things that I just remember in a very crude sense. You'll have to ask someone far more qualified than me.
So when it comes to taking away from the elections of specific people in the system of Shariah, would you say that Shariah should be imposed, or that Shariah should only be imposed if the majority of people want it?
I don't know. I don't think, practically you can never impose a system on anybody. How can you?
Well, that's dictatorship.
Yeah, exactly. So Islam is not a theocracy. Well, practically you can, but it won't work. That's why, for example, take the prophetic model, the Prophet Muhammad upon him be peace. The way that he established his political governance was that he positively influenced the influentials of that particular society, and those influentials influenced their people, and they wanted it. They were calling for it. So ideally, there will be an Islamic government when people call for it. And that's it, really. Yeah. You can't. Well, it could be rebellion, it could be revolution, it could be anything, really. Or it could be what happened in Georgia. Remember, everyone just stormed the parliament. Do you remember? That was an amazing. Not one gunshot. That's what we want, essentially. You don't want any blood, do you? So you just want to basically storm the parliament and say, "This is the people want this now." I don't know. You'd have to ask someone more qualified than me. I'm quite. I have an intellectual poverty when it comes to these issues, but I just want to try to distinguish between democracy as a philosophy and the Sharia as a philosophy. They are quite different from that perspective, because democracy is more of a procedural and philosophical perspective, whereas Islam, its philosophy would not say that man can rule. It has to be God rules always, and that's the classical view on Islam, on Islamic politics. So from that perspective, there are key differences. But procedurally, there could be similarities, like how do you get there? But you have to ask someone that knows better than me. Sorry. Last question. Go on.
You talked about different ideas of freedom and how Sharia law is kind of free our hearts rather than because you've got consumers that make it great monkeys.
Yes.
What are things that we want? What are things we want which isn't wanted by consumers? For example, what does Sharia law have to say about homosexuality, same-sex marriage.
Yes.
There are things that we want which we don't. It's not put there by consumerism. It's just a part of us to want that.
Yes.
And what does?
Well, it's not allowed.
Why?
Because it's wrong.
Why?
Because God says so.
But what if God isn't real? So.
Well, that's the debate we should be having, then, isn't it?
Shariah law doesn't. It works under the.
Let me demystify it for you. Yeah. At the end of the day, every society is going to stop people doing things that they want to do. For example, paedophilia. I did psychology at uni, and I could show to you that paedophilia could be shown to be a natural instinct, a natural drive. Are we going to allow paedophilia? Now, I'm not equating paedophilia with homosexuality, but don't even quote me doing that. I'm not doing that. Yeah. I'm trying to apply your principle. And if you apply that principle, what we're going to do, allow paedophiles to get away with it, especially when the people they're doing it with, like young boys, they have consent as well, by the way, in a lot of the cases. So there's no real harm. Yeah? Anybody with comments? So the point is, what are you going to do? Based on your principle, you should allow paedophiles. Because you're saying, are you going to allow, listen to this very carefully, be philosophical, not emotional, yeah? It's not emotional react. Are you going to allow, you say, what about things that we want to do, that's because we want to do, it's nothing to do with consumerism? Would the Shariah stop that? So yes, but other systems stop those things too. For example, someone wants to become homosexual, are they allowed to publicly manifest that? In Shariah, no. Someone wants to become pedophile, are they allowed to publicly manifest that? No. In other countries and in the Shariah as well, yeah? Same principle. Now the thing is, with homosexuality, you could do what you like at home. Islam has a very divine principle. You can't spy, you can't be suspicious. Even if you catch someone at home doing something, you can't even mention it. And for you to use as evidence will be seen as no evidence. So privacy is privacy. You want to be homosexual? Do what you want at home. Yeah? It becomes a crime when it's publicly manifested. That's the Sharia. And not many people know that. They think we're hunting for homosexuals, yeah? We're not, yeah? We've got far more great things to do with poverty, yeah? And then these are small issues, really. Yeah? So there's no homophobia, no one's scared of homosexuals or hates them from that perspective, yeah? They just see it as a spiritual problem. That's how we see it. We see it as a spiritual problem. Just like the Christians and the Buddhists.
It's only wrong if Islam is correct, which obviously, as Nathan would argue, it isn't. You're working under the presupposition.
Yeah, but why are you saying it's right then?
Huh?
Why are you saying it's right?
What? I'm saying it's acceptable for
why?
a man to.
Why?
Well, why is it wrong?
No, but look, our morality is shaped by a reference point. Yes, you're right. My morality is shaped by Islam. So therefore, if I do believe divine exists and the Quranic discourse is from him, which by the way I could hopefully show, and I've got good reasons to believe in that, then that shapes my moral worldview. And you have a moral view which is it's right. Why? What's your moral reference point?
Right, it is not any more wrong than love between a man and a woman.
Why?
Why would it be more wrong? The null hypothesis is that it's acceptable to love,
No, but you're changing it. I love my brother. It doesn't mean I'm gay. It doesn't mean that. Love is different. You're talking about the homosexual act, okay? Not the homosexual feelings. Homosexual act. There's a difference in Sharia, yeah? So you're not sinful for having homosexual feelings. And no one's judging anybody. Yeah? We don't have to do that in Islam, yeah? But the point is, the homosexual act, how does it make it morally right?
Why is it? So what? Yeah, but
well, you need justification just like I need justification, sir. Tell me why is it right? Where is your moral foundation? Or don't you have one?
It's not like particularly. It's not right. Like charity is right, or but it's just not wrong.
Okay, why is it not wrong?
It's neutral.
Why?
Well, why? I'm saying
you don't even know, do you?
But you take that.
Just admit you have no basis for your moral behavior.
Yeah, the only reason you've given for homosexuality being wrong is that you say God says it's wrong. Now, the basis whereby someone who doesn't believe in God will come to the conclusion, and this is where it separates from paedophilia, that it isn't wrong, is because it doesn't harm anyone.
That's not true. That's not true.
Well, isn't it?
That's not true. I did really want to be crude here, but I could tell you how it harms people in a huge way. Have you studied biology? Okay, let me give you one-on-one on biology, yeah? Even from a biology, you study something called structure and function, yeah?
Yes.
Yeah.
Let me get into it. I'm going to give you a crude detail so you just see that there is a rational reason for it.
talking about being between consenting people.
Forget that. Well, consenting people, you could be cannibals and be consenting people and think it's fine, yeah? There's a different situation. You could be like, I like it, I like being eaten, yeah? I mean, no offense. Now, I'll give you an example. Biology, yeah? From an evolutionary standpoint, for me, it doesn't make sense. The sphincter muscle, for example, is a one-way muscle. Yeah, it's a one-way valve, yeah? If you're a doctor, I know many doctor friends, if you put your finger in that canal, it can scratch and bleed it very easily, yeah? Contrast that with the vagina, for instance, yeah? It's deliberately very thick, and its mucus has antibacterial agents as well, for example. So from a structure function perspective, even if you were just a biologist, you'd be like, okay, well that's going to actually damage, and that's not. So there is a biological reason for that too. So from that case, it's harmful, because it always bleeds, yeah? So from your case of harm, it's harmful. But the point is, believing in God is irrelevant.
Yes,
and don't get me wrong, I'm not judging homosexuals, yeah? I have Muslim friends who are homosexual. I like to say that, by the way, yeah? But they don't practice it. They think it's a spiritual issue, yeah?
Your principle is that God says it's wrong.
Yeah.
Whereas the principle whereby we can tell...
What's wrong with that?
Homosexually, because it calls into... Start with God. If God changed his mind and said it was right, would it then be right?
Okay.
Is something wrong because
No,
God
but
says
by
it's
nature,
wrong?
God doesn't change his mind, though. That's because it's his nature.
Well, yes, but
That-
say it. Is something wrong because God says it's wrong? Or is God
That's
saying
Plato's
it's wrong
dilemma. That's a false
because
dichotomy.
objective
It's a
right?
false dichotomy. I'm going to explain why Plato's dilemma is a false, three-false dilemma. But let me just make a point to you, yeah? A very crude example. My son is 4.5, nearly 5, and he's sitting in this audience and he's looking at a mathematics professor writing down calculus. My son's very patient and he stands on the chair and says, Professor, you're a bozo. You don't know nothing about mathematics. Now what do I say? I say, okay, look, son, I was rude. You have no authority. You know nothing about maths. I know that. This guy's a professor on maths. So he has authority. He sees things that he doesn't see. Same with the divine. We're the 4.5-year-old. And the analogy here that God, one, is an authority. Two, he knows things better than we know. And he sees the social effect of things better than we know them. The only premise is that God exists and the divine discourse is the Quran. But we have philosophical reasons for that. What's wrong with that? That actually is very rational. Your point is like a 4.5-year-old telling to the professor, you're an idiot. That's how we see it.
The difference is the professor can then explain to the 4.5-year-old why he's wrong.
Yeah, but God has explained it as well. You assume he hasn't explained it. He's explained it because God says what I command you to do is good for you. And I know you better than you know yourself. Yes? Don't get me wrong. No hatred against homosexuals. No violence against homosexuals. I was sitting with a homosexual in a car for hours, just discussing about man, life, and the universe. I have no problems with this. It's not an issue. This is all hypothetical and philosophical. So I want to make that clear that Muslims are not allowed to treat anyone any harm. The Prophet said, there is no harming and no reciprocating no harm. This is just purely on philosophical moral grounds, which everyone has a right to advocate.
Before I get to my actual question, just to discuss this one little bit more. As a non-believer,
Yes.
I find it a bit of a... you can say, yes, it's divine authority, but we went through this kind of song and dance in England quite a few centuries ago,
Yes.
when the king decided, I have a divine right to be overruled. I think it's linked to your sort of divine rule in different countries.
Yes.
And the people said, no, you're an unjust authority.
Yes.
So, to say it's right by divine right, it can't be taken by the people. I always believe that if anything that's said by divine authority is unjust, then it's the right of the people to challenge it.
Yeah, of course.
So how can you say that people can say homosexuality is not a spiritual issue, and they can challenge God, yet they're wrong? You can't concede that point.
No. What you have to understand is that the kings, for example, they just claimed something that was baseless. We're not saying that. We're saying, well, regardless if you believe or don't believe, we've got good evidence that the divine exists. Let's discuss that. And these should be the real discussions, by the way, because it shapes our worldview. And we believe this book or the Quran discourse is from the divine. That's obviously going to shape your worldview if you believe it to be true. That's obvious. And the discussion should be, instead of all these like fruits, go straight to the roots. Are the foundations solid? Because then someone could argue in a fair way that morality has no meaning in your paradigm. Because it shifts based on social consensus and time. or if it has an evolutionary and social pressure perspective. If that's the case, it has absolutely no meaning, because you shouldn't even disagree with Nazi.
It doesn't rob it of meaning at all.
Sorry?
It doesn't rob
It does. I'm going to show you how it does, yeah? Because you have only two other foundations for morality. It's social consensus, fellow feeling. Yeah? Well, that's huge. Hi, can't you see the problem with that? So in 50 years' time, if there's a social, for example, Nazi Germany, social consensus, let's go kill Jews.
No, that isn't social consensus. That is power grab. That is consolidation of power.
Then you've got hit the nail on the head. So you're saying to me, you haven't been influenced by the power structures of society.
I'm not saying I haven't been influenced.
Well, there you go. Your mind is shaped on the same kind of mechanism. That's exactly the same point.
You're arguing about what you'd like to be true. Now, the idea would be that there is a God.
Yes.
Defines morality. You're criticising morality under the idea that there isn't a God. You know, the fact itself. Now, if there isn't a God, then yeah, it might be an imperfect morality, but there's nothing you can do. It won't make one appear if you argue against it.
Yeah, I know, but you're missing a point.
You're correct that it's based. It's a question of whether God exists, and obviously it's about God.
Yeah, but that's the whole point. That's what I've been mentioning.
But it makes an irrelevance of arguing why.
No, it doesn't make it irrelevant.
No, it does make it irrelevant because it should argue.
Okay, let's not believe in God then, yeah? Let's not believe in God just because you said so, yeah? Of course it's relevant. If the divine exists, then he has rights that we have to fulfill towards him, right?
Yeah,
So the point is if, yeah. So the point is, but your one's based on the if as well. Because you're just assuming the presupposition, you're assuming atheism to be true, which to be honest has absolutely no basis in reality. So that's the philosophical question. Does the divine exist or does he not? And that's the situation.
That's a debate, obviously you can't have now.
Oh, we can. I'm gonna 5 minutes. I'll prove you guys the distance. Yeah. Good. Right. Here we go. Do we have 5 minutes?
5 minutes. It's the last one.
Oh, last one. 5 minutes. Oh, there's a question. This one. Oh, let me just deal with this first, yeah? Islam teaches peace, but there are so many jihadists which are used as an example to say bad things about Islam in a general stereotypical way in the West. So, when is jihad right? Jihad is right when it's right. It's right when you defend yourself. Everyone has a right to defend themselves. Article 51 of the UN Charter. And the offensive type of jihad where you go and do intervention, the Quran says when there's oppression and stuff like that. So it's very similar to Western foreign policy discourse. Now, some people claim that it's okay to go and kill innocent human beings. I disagree with that. I think that's not very prophetic at all. It goes against the caliphs of Islam, like Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu, the right-hand man of the Prophet Muhammad upon whom be peace, the first caliph of Islam. He gave a whole treatise on you can't kill innocents, etc. So that's my view. So you just have to assess it by the prism of Islam, by the principles that Islam teaches you. Look at a particular reality. If someone claims it to be jihad, does it mean it's jihad? Of course not. Is killing babies jihad? I mean, on what basis? I don't think that has any historical basis or any precedents from my limited, humble reading. So that's not jihad. But obviously there are far more complexities to get involved in, like, is collateral damage something to take into consideration in foreign policy? The West do it. Is Islam allowed to do it? I don't know. I don't know these answers. These answers are for the theologians and the philosophers and the thinkers. But generally, as a general principle, jihad is not killing innocent people. That's almost a fact. The Prophet Muhammad upon whom be peace, he strongly reprimanded people killing children and women. Abu Bakr, he talked about like almost the 10 principles. Islam predated the Geneva Convention. It predated the Geneva Convention to the point that you can't kill trees, you can't kill monks, innocent people, unarmed combatants, etc., etc. So from that perspective, jihad is not going crazy and killing people. I think they've used the concept of jihad just to do what they want to do in the first place, which is terrible. And that's what human beings do. It's all based on the ego. Right. 2 minutes, God's existence. Okay, we're going to leave the cows come home now, yeah? Very simply, yeah? My premise is that I believe the universe began to exist, and we have strong reasons for that. That's based on philosophical, mathematical, and astrophysical perspectives, okay? The first perspective is based on philosophical. You can't have the infinity ontologically exported into the real world, which basically means, as the concept, it makes sense in mathematics, but it can't be transported into the real world. For instance, what's infinity minus infinity, or infinity minus 5, etc., etc. We need to paradoxes and problems. So if you apply it to the history of the universe, the history can't be infinite. It must be finite, therefore it began. Second point is that you have astrophysical evidence. For example, the second law of thermodynamics, if you consider the universe to be a closed system, then if it was in a state of eternity, meaning it didn't begin, or it's in a state of infinite, then we should have a heat death by now. Okay? Because you know the second law of thermodynamics, you have from low entropy to high entropy. Okay? So therefore it indicates, there's good reason to believe it began. Also, you have evidence like Big Bang cosmology. For example, you have the hot standard model, the oscillation model, the quantum fluctuation model, various models, although they're just supporting evidence, not direct evidence. And they all have principles within it to necessitate a beginning in time. Cosmologists like the theoretical physicist Alexander Vilenkin saying that the universe has a space-time boundary, we can't run away from the beginning of the universe. Now, if we've got good reason to believe that the universe began, therefore we have three questions. It came from a state of non-existence to existence by nothing. It created itself, self-creation, or it was created. Right, can something exist from a state of non-existence by nothing? No. Very simply, have a magic hat, nothing inside, tap, 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 bunch of flowers. You know, it's just a trick, because the intuition is, from via nothing, nothing comes. This is why P.J. Schwartz in his publication about time said, out of nothing, nothing comes. Now, some physicists say, no, things do pop into existence out of nothing, and they quote the quantum vacuum, but the quantum vacuum is not nothing, it's actually a rich structure, it obeys the laws of the universe. If you go to the scientists, you see the quantum vacuum is something. So that contention is baseless. Second, can it create itself? No. Can your mother create herself? Can she give birth to herself? Very messy situation, don't even imagine it. So your mother can't create herself, is a crude analogy, but then Stephen Hawking writes in his book, The Grand Design, that self-creation is possible because of the law of gravity and the quantum vacuum, but again, you need the universe for the universe to exist, and the law of gravity is a force of attraction between two masses, so saying mass must exist before you have mass, so he's not even answering the question, self-creation doesn't make sense philosophically. Interestingly, in his book, in the introduction, he says philosophy is dead, but if you read the book, it's full of philosophy, the irony. Third point, the universe must have been created is the best example. At least it must have a cause. And this cause doesn't mean it's God or Jesus or Buddha or anyone else. It just means there's a cause. But when you use conceptual analysis, which means thinking deeply about something, using reason, rationality, you come to the 6 golden attributes, which I called. The first attribute is that it must be powerful because it created the whole universe. It must be intelligent because there's laws in the universe. If you create the universe, therefore it must be a lawgiver, which implies an intelligence. The other point is it must be uncaused, because no one disagrees, like Professor Abraham Varghese, he says that look, no one disagrees with the fact that something must be uncaused. Either the universe is uncaused, or what caused the cause of the universe is uncaused. But since we know the universe had a beginning, therefore it must be caused, so therefore the cause of the universe is uncaused. And also you'll have an absurdity of infinite regress, because if I want to give you a big kiss on your forehead, and I had to ask permission from someone else, and that permission was continuing forever, unfortunately you won't get that kiss me, yeah? So the infinite regress is absurd, so we wouldn't have the universe in the first place, it must be uncaused. So from there, we also have that it must be one. From there, we know it must have a will. Because if it's uncaused, it implies it's eternal, and it brought into existence a finite effect, which basically means it chose the universe to come to existence. And choice indicates a will. After having a will, it must be one, because one will is equal to one God. If you have 2 wills, then you have these possibilities. Either the universe never got created because the wills clash, otherwise, or one will overcame the other will, which basically means there's only one will in the first place. So whatever scenario you take, it means there's going to be one will, therefore one God. And that's really summing up the divine. It agrees with the principle in the Quran, in the 112th chapter, قُلْ وَاللَّهُ أَحَدْ اللَّهُ الصَّمَدْ لَمْ يَلِدْ وَلَمْ يُولَدْ وَلَمْ يَكُنْ لَهُ كُفُوًا أَحَدٌ. Say He's God, uniquely one, eternal. He begets not, always begotten, there's nothing like unto Him. Now you may think that's God of the gaps, it's not God of the gaps. God of the gaps is you don't know, and you squeeze God in there. We've started with reality, we observe, logic, we've done conceptual analysis, and it correlates to the divine of Islam. There's your argument. I'll give you all day, and I guarantee you every contention will be met. Let's go. Bismillah.
Right, okay. Well,
I had to do that really fast. I'm sorry. I had 2 minutes for it. So.
No, hold on. No,
Did you get it all though?
Yes. No.
Good.
Cool. I mean, what that boils down to essentially is the argument first. Cool.
No. That means you've never heard it before.
What?
That means you've never heard it before.
Well,
it's not the first. The first course argument is a very old argument. Let's move away from the Dawkins Hitchens narrative, yeah?
It boils down to it because we've essentially said.
Okay, let's not judge the argument. So what's your contentions?
Okay.
Give me your contentions.
Well, firstly, you say that the universe has to have a cause. You've made that God, then you've attributed qualities to.
No, I didn't do that. It was the other way around. Okay, listen to this. Let's be attentive. I know I said it really fast, but I apologize. We said, universe has a beginning. It began to exist. Then we say, therefore, we have certain options. Could existence come from non-existence by nothing? Could it create itself? Or did it have a cause or creator? So we analyze the options. Best explanation, cause. We didn't say it's God. We didn't even say, I didn't even mention, I even specifically said.
You added that later.
Yeah, no, I didn't. I didn't even do that.
You gave it loads of followers.
Ah, there you go. So upon we still be rational, said if the cause created the whole universe, conceptual analysis must have these 6 attributes which relates to the divine. That's my point.
Well, okay, because we're short on time, just on the case for a cause, firstly, obviously you have to terminate there because that just says, well, what caused the cause, in this case, what you call God. But also, I'd say...
No, I've answered that.
No,
Let me just...
It obviously is difficult to explain the beginning of the universe, just if it's difficult to explain the beginning of God. But I'd say there's arguments for complexity in there, and that God is a far more thing to somehow come into existence than the universe, because God would have to be more complex than the universe.
No, that's a very old Richard Dawkins argument. Can I deal with it, please? Sorry. Let me deal with it. Sorry. The reason I'm jumping because I hear this all the time. This is my job, yeah? So, and I don't want to sound arrogant. I just want to really cut to the chase. Okay. Firstly, the problem of who caused God, that's not a problem. We already addressed that because we said there are 2 options. Either the universe is uncaused, or what caused the cause what caused the universe is uncaused. We've established the universe. Sorry, 1 minute. Let me finish it. We've established the universe is actually caused because it began.
You've established it had a beginning.
Yeah.
You know, you could say that the cause would have to have a beginning.
Okay.
So, again,
good. Let's do that.
Go on forever. So in that case,
okay. So what does that mean? That means the cause must be uncaused. Let me give you an example.
Well, yeah, but that means the cause would also not have a beginning, which defies logic.
Why? No, wait. Why does it? There's nothing illogical with an uncaused cause. There's nothing illogical about that.
There's nothing illogical. So I say that again.
There's nothing illogical about an uncaused cause, because I think you're conflating between the proposition, whatever is created, whatever begins to exist as a cause.
You keep working your way backwards whenever you start from, what caused it. In this case, we've gone back to the ultimate beginning, which is how the universe came about. Now, to explain the beginning of the universe, you've just added another thing in.
No, we haven't. This is what you have to understand.
You said, like, at the beginning of the universe had a cause, and this causes God. We're not going to say what caused God.
No, we're not saying that. We said, ask the question. Ask the question, what caused the cause of the universe? Yeah?
Okay, what caused the cause of the universe?
Yeah, well, let's follow that through. And I was just about to answer that, yeah? That's why I want you to understand this. I'm not here just to play, yeah? So look, I'm going to give you 2 various scenarios. Let me give you the first scenario. And I did that with the infinite regress of me kissing your forehead, yeah? Now let me just make this case. Right. First and foremost, whatever begins to exist has a cause. We've established the universe began to exist, therefore it has a cause. It's an undeniable principle, okay? That's the first point. The second point is, no one would deny that something must be uncaused, either the universe or something outside that caused the universe to be uncaused. Now, if we keep on asking the question, what caused the cause, we can ask that question, but then we say this, what caused the cause that caused the universe? Then what caused that cause that caused that cause that caused the universe? Wait a minute. Then what caused that cause that caused that cause that caused that cause?
You've got no better reason to say that God's the one at the end than just the universe.
No,
it's case to say the universe, because the universe is a less complex thing to have to exist.
No, I'm going to answer that. Let me answer it. Stop butting in, yeah? Sorry. Let me answer it, yeah? So, if we have an infinite regress of causes, it means we don't even have the universe. Okay? I give you an example. So you had a whole length of dominoes, right? And you can't see the end, but you see them all dropped, and the one in front of you has dropped as well. That means there was a beginning to the dominoes. It's not forever. So it necessitates there must be something outside of that kind of chain that's uncaused that caused that chain to happen. So it's called rational necessity must be uncaused, right? The second point is you're assuming that God must be more complex than the universe itself. But that assumption is only based upon a part if you think God is mechanical.
That's just based on logic.
Yeah,
firstly, you'd have to be able to
I know what you're talking about. I know what you're talking about.
It's going to be a lot more complex.
No, that's not entirely true, and I'm going to explain that. It depends, and this is a big philosophical discussion on complexity. But by the way, even if you're right, it doesn't undermine the argument. That's the joke thing about it. But let me tell you something. God is not made of parts. Like in the Islamic monotheistic tradition, we believe He's one, okay, and we see everything within His oneness. Richard Dawkins, especially when he mentioned in his book, The God Delusion, when he says that God must be far more complex because He created so much of created the whole universe. That's not entirely true unless you assume God is made of parts. But that's a straw man of the divine. Do you see? That's a straw man of the divine. And the second thing is, to undermine that statement, who does software engineering? No one. We'll find someone who does software engineering. I met a PhD student in Cambridge, and he was saying we can make a piece of software that's more complex than us. Take that and smoke it. Good, isn't it? But the point I'm trying to say to you is, look at this. But this is the irony of the debate, yeah? God is so irrational. So irrational. But we're finding it so hard just to break down even a basic premise. Do you see?
Well, yes, but what's that got to do with whether He exists or not?
Because if you can't break down the argument, then therefore
yes,
it's an argument. It's a good argument.
Well, at the same point, you're saying it's not proof, but you're saying you don't prove something you can't even define. Now, I'm saying that something
No, I can define. I defined it.
be more complex than the thing it creates.
Yeah, I disagree with that.
The software is inaccurate because, of course, this is all about something creating something out of nothing. It's completely different from taking existing stuff.
No, it's not out of nothing. I never mentioned that.
You won't get something more complex.
You're making a straw man of my argument, sir. Really listen. I never said create out of nothing. I'm saying, can the universe from a state of from non-existence come into existence via nothing, not from nothing? Maybe there was other stuff outside. Who knows? I'm not making that assumption. You're making that assumption. Yeah.
So you're saying that you believe in God, but not necessarily that there would be a point where it was just God.
No, I do believe that. But if it's just God, therefore it's not nothing, is it?
If you do believe that, then if there's a point there was nothing, just God, then everything else exists because God created it.
Yes, yeah, that's what we believe. Yeah. No, well, see, to use the word nothing it's a bit problematic because the point is, all we know from our reality, because we're putting that assumption in there. The reason I want to make this argument because it's non-religious per se. I don't want to make other religious assumptions in the argument. All we're saying is, from a state of a non-existence to existence, can it come to existence via nothing? That's an absurdity in itself. Yeah? So something brought into existence. Now we're not attributing straight away it's the divine, but when we use conceptual analysis, said well, it has these attributes, and my God, it's in line with what God is according to Scripture. That's the point. So it's not the kind of because a lot of atheists do that sometimes, like it's the first cause thing and it's cause. You just said it's God. Actually, no. If you were attentive to the argument, we broke down an analysis of why the universe must begin. If it began, it has a cause, and if it has a cause, therefore we give it these attributes, not based on have this and have that. It's based upon the fact that we use conceptual analysis. There's no other conceptual disagreement to that.
This conceptual analysis is essentially choosing what you assign to it, and that matches up to what you believe. Whereas I'm interested in using
no, that's not true.
To show that this can't be proof of the existence of God.
Yeah, no, that's not true. Because conceptual analysis is a rational method.
Where?
It's for you to deny conceptual analysis, you've denied every single scientific conclusion that has come onto this planet. Because when we have data, we make inferences, and an inference is reasoning to the best conclusion. If you deny what I do with conceptual analysis, you've denied all science.
No, I'm not denying conceptual. I'm denying it in this case.
Oh, who's picking and choosing now? Why would you deny in this case? On what basis?
Because it doesn't work.
Why? But it does. Why doesn't it work?
All inferences are correct. I mean, the ones you've applied here are somewhat arbitrary. Now, this is almost a case of working backwards. You've taken what you believe to be a God.
No, I haven't.
And sort of backtracked it into what you think.
I didn't backtrack. I actually start from the beginning. I didn't start from the end.
Okay, well,
that's why it's called the argument from the beginning of the universe, not from the end of the universe. I didn't.
No, I'm saying you've got your conclusion to begin with.
Oh, sorry guys, we have an event at 5. Well, now.
What's your event?
My name is Tanya. I just talked to the booking rooms, and they say that nobody has to be here at this time.
Okay, we'll wrap it up now.
What's your event? Can we sit and watch as well?
Of course.
What is it?
It's enterprise and business.
That's boring. I wish you the best. Thank you for instructing us in a very polite way. That's polite.
I'm really scary because our event is in a couple of minutes.
Okay, we're leaving now.
Thank you very much.
We have to continue this.
You said leave it for a while, yeah? Well, yeah, it's better there for us than for the man.
You told me that's fine.
Making sure that section.
I can get to the